One, got a packed house tonight. If I get everybody to stand, we're going to say the Pledge of Allegiance, followed by an invocation by Tom Cates from Rise, Indiana Church. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
If you'd pray with me, please. Father, thank you for this evening. Thank you for all who've come and most for those who serve. God, I pray that you just continue to bless them with discernment and wisdom. And a special prayer, God, that you just continue to bless the town with peace and prosperity and a spirit of cooperation between its leaders and citizens, God. And a special blessing, God, on the fire personnel who are going to be sworn in tonight. Thank you for them. Thank you for all the first responders. And just continue to keep them safe and that the community just continue to give an outpouring of gratitude for them. Thank you for all you do, God. It's in Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen. President Tam, would you like to run the meeting, please?
Hey, thank you, Mayor. This evening we have what we believe is one of the most important things we can do, which is also welcome our public safety, but first and foremost our firefighters this evening. I know the chief is here as well as the mayor to swear in a new class of 15 firefighters, which we're always super excited to add a great fire department and add more young talent to it as well. So, Chief and the Mayor. Oh, we got to do quorum. I'm actually more excited to do this than anything else. So we need to note the presence of a quorum, and I believe Councilor Huff's online as well.
Noah Herron.
Here.
Chad Huff.
I am. First meeting.
Here.
Victor McCarty.
Here.
Patrick Tam.
Here.
Kurt Wanninger.
Here.
John Dart.
Here.
Joe Deppner.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you. The next order of business is we need to approve the minutes from the last meeting. I assume that everyone's had a chance to review those. I need a motion and a second.
Motion to approve the meeting minutes?
Second.
We have a motion made by Councilor McCarty, seconded by Councilor Dart. Seeing no other discussion, may we call the roll?
Chad Huff.
Yes.
Victor McCarty.
Yes.
Patrick Tam.
Yes.
Kurt Wanninger.
Yes.
John Dart.
Yes.
Joe Deppner.
Yes.
Noah Herron.
Yes.
Motion carries 7-0.
Thank you. We do not have any changes to the agenda other than the opening of the meeting. The call to order was a little bit different, and I'm obviously very excited to welcome firefighters to the community. Mayor? Residents who wish to address the council. Yeah, right there.
Before we swear these fine men and women in, I'd like just to say a few words. This is the finest our city has to offer right here between our police and our fire. Very few people are willing to raise their hand and put their lives on the line every single day for each and every one of you in this room, including myself. I'm honored to be your mayor. I'm honored to be here tonight to swear you in. I can't think of a better thing to do as a mayor than to have this moment with you all and swearing you in and welcoming you to our city. Please, if you would, keep them in your prayers over the coming years. We do have fires in Westfield. We had a really bad one a couple of weeks ago, and many of these folks will roll up on a scene that God forbid anybody would have to see, and this will weigh on them in the coming years as they grow with our city. And just keep them in your thoughts and prayers that they stay safe, and both physically and mentally. And we appreciate you. Our residents always, I think in Westfield, always pay respects to our public safety people, and we certainly appreciate that. If you would, everybody raise your right hand and repeat after me. I state your name. Do solemnly swear support, uphold, and defend the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of Indiana. And I will honestly, faithfully, and impartially execute the duties assigned to me as a firefighter/EMS for the city of Westfield, Indiana, to the best of my ability, and always in accordance with existing law and policies. So help me God. Congratulations. Chief, you want to say a few words?
I wasn't going to, but I will. First and foremost, thanks everybody for being here, and I want to welcome. I spoke to both groups. We've got a blend of some lateral transfers from some other organizations into the community, as well as some new recruit firefighters. I'm not going to tell their story. We'll be here all night, but I would be happy to introduce to you the newest folks, newest members of the Westfield Fire Department, and again, ask for a round of applause.
Yeah, while our new class departs, you do not have to stick around for the entire council meeting, so we'll just take a little pause here while. We're going to resume the council meeting, but I know everyone wants to hear about our street asset presentation, but we have quite a few people signed up for public comments this evening. Just wanted to remind people of Rule 21 for the City Council of Westfield. Members of the public are encouraged to attend council meetings and make comment on matters of public concern in compliance with this rule. Time for public comments shall be noted on each council agenda, as well as appropriate time for comments during public hearings. Each citizen who wishes to speak shall be allowed 3 minutes to speak. Generally, speakers shall be limited to one presentation during a meeting on each issue or matter. Comments should be addressed to the council rather than members of the audience. Speakers should not expect a lengthy dialogue with council members or city officials, as comments should be a presentation of information or opinion. council members may address, questions of each speaker. If a citizen wishes to speak, he or she may fill out a request to speak card, which are available. We just ask when you're recognized just to state your name, address, and provide any hard copies that you may or may not have to the clerk treasurer and the council as well. In addition, we just encourage civility in public discourse and request that speakers refrain from disruptive behavior, extended discussion of irrelevancies, obscenity, and personal attacks against private individuals. Never happened, but that's part of our rules. I'll skip over some pieces, but you do have 3 minutes to speak, and I think we do have a decent number of folks. Director Todd, if you would like to call the first.
Yep, we currently have 5 cards.
Great.
Ryan Herron.
Good evening, Council. My name is Ryan Herron. I'm the Westfield District Vice President for the Local 4416, and I represent the professional firefighters and paramedics of Westfield. With me this evening is Tony Murray. Tony serves as president of our state union, the Professional Firefighters Union of Indiana. He stands tonight with me in solidarity. This evening, I want to address an ongoing issue you are all aware of regarding public safety employees for Westfield and the first 3 pays of 2025. Every payroll produced this year has contained errors detrimental to my members and their families. We expected some bumps in the first pay cycle because it was the first pay of the year. Unfortunately, incorrectly issuing our first pay has become an annual occurrence. As you know, the second pay was a complete disaster. Nothing on my members' pay statements made sense. After receiving multiple commitments to fix said errors, everything somehow worsened on the third pay of the year. Some examples of the issues my members faced. 4 members did not receive a direct deposit whatsoever of their paycheck, even though ADP showed they had been paid. Multiple members got hit with double deductions of taxes, HSA, insurance premiums, union dues, and 457 contributions. Multiple members' overtime hours were not paid out at all. My members couldn't even access their time cards, nor could their supervisors within the department. The 2025 payroll issues have caused undue hardship and stress to those who bravely serve this community and their families. Public safety members should not have to worry about their paychecks while responding to emergencies or making life and death situations that affect our citizens. My members are also deeply concerned that their next paycheck will also be incorrect. I appreciate that the mayor and this council have brought in an outside accounting firm to help address these issues. I'm also thankful for the collaboration between the council, the mayor's office, financial strategists, and HR for the countless hours they've spent trying to reach a resolution on behalf of my members for a problem that they did not create. It's great to have support from some of our elected officials. I'm hopeful we can all find a solution, and I'm offering my personal assistance in any way that I can from my position as District Vice President of Westfield, Local 4416. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Next card, Bill Koss.
Good evening. I'm addressing the Claiborne Farms proposal to increase the PUD expansion of something that came into Southwest Westfield a few years ago, the Pulte Kimblewick plan. Our area was designated as larger estates, minimum of 3 acres. The vast majority of the area that we're talking about is on 151st Town Road, 159th and Little Eagle Creek Avenue and Shelbourne Road. Most of those homes in that area were 5.5 acres or more. They're people that have been there for over 20 years in most cases. This is a big investment for them. They chose to live in a rural area, and that was our comprehensive plan going back to 2007, and that doesn't necessarily need to change. There are certain areas that we want Westfield to expand into. We want commercial. We want certain areas, but it's got to be done sensibly, reasonably, responsibly. So we have a jewel in our midst here of 108 acres of forest land that's in the midst, butting up against to Kimblewick. Many of the Kimblewick people moved in there, they thought they were gonna keep that. Now, it's private, so it's not necessarily guaranteed. However, trees provide oxygen. They convert carbon dioxide into oxygen. A young, healthy forest, and when I say young, I mean like 35 years old, that is producing oxygen at a tremendous rate for all of our community. They're beautiful. They're hardwood. It's not a junk woods like many woods you see trees. Trees are not just trees. There's good quality, and these are good quality. Oak, black walnut, hickory, many white pine mixed in as nurse trees to cause the trees to grow up. These trees, we talked about on our August 26th meeting that we wanted to preserve trees. And now here we are talking about clear cutting them in order to put in small homes on small acres and then plant little yard trees. That's not the same as hardwood forest. So I would encourage you to vote no on this, and let's rethink this, reset, and move forward positively.
Thank you, Mr. Cross. Appreciate it.
Greg Jacobs.
Hello, I'm Greg Jacobs. I live on Arkell Road in the Kimblewick addition that's existing currently now on the south side. So my backyard looks at all of your trees. And working with Pulte through the last couple of, well, probably more than a couple of months, probably 6-8 months, and with the town council, I think we've developed something very, very good, very, very workable, and I would encourage our town council or city council to please vote for it. We will save a lot of the trees. The people that live in Kimblewick are going to be really, really good neighbors. I can assure you that. We well-kept yards, very good houses, a lot of green space. We're really, really nice people. We don't party. We're all in bed by 10 o'clock. We don't have RVs. We don't have boats. We don't have excess cars in the neighborhood, on the streets. We don't have outbuildings. A lot of green space. And as I say, we're very, very friendly, very, very nice people. I think it's a tremendous addition to not only Westfield, but that community. You couldn't ask for better neighbors than what you're going to be getting. So I would hope that you all could vote for it. It's been a long journey. The town council worked very, very well with the residents. Pulte's worked very, very well with the residents. And I think we have an incredibly good end project. So please vote yes.
Thank you.
Vernon Reisman.
Good evening. Vernon Reisman, 2934 Buchanan. I am also in Kimblewick. I really want to just thank my councilman, Patrick Tam, for all the work and hours he put in. We really appreciate the time you spent on this journey. When this plan for Kimblewick was first presented, my neighbors were in disbelief. They agreed with why are we touching the trees, what are we doing with the trees. But through a very good process, Mr. Tam worked with David Compton of Pulte, as well as Rex of Pulte, and found a good workable solution. It protects the border of the property with at least 150 feet of trees on 3 sides and some trees also on the south side. They found a way to do it. They came up with a plan to address our amenity center issues. A lot of residents were concerned about the additional demand of 200 people on the amenity center. We have 3 options that we can choose from, and I think that's a workable solution. So all in all I hear from my neighbors now, for the most part, is they are in favor of this going forward, and obviously I can't speak on their behalf. I'm just telling you what I hear from my neighbors that were initially against it. They are now for it for the most part. Nothing is ever 100%, but for the most part, the neighborhood is now for it, and I hope that you'll vote for it tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Vern.
Final cards at the moment, Vernon Poland.
Good evening. I'm Vernon Poland at 15383 Copper Beach Lane and Copper Beach Farms. I'm here tonight to say that I would hope you would reconsider voting yes on this, that in fact you would vote no. When we moved into our property, it was with the understanding that the comprehensive plan called for area or development in our area to be limited to 3-acre lots or more. And I think putting in 150 production homes into a 40-acre beautiful woods is an anathema to that. I don't think that that represents anything or shows goodwill towards what the city and the citizens had agreed upon. We don't have a change in that plan at this time, and I believe it's being worked on at this time. So I would prefer that we had a plan in place rather than to just disregard the plan that was already there. I appreciate the work that the board's put in. I appreciate the compromises that have been made, and I know that some of my neighbors are happy with the extra space that they have so that they're not right up against a production housing project. But that doesn't change the fact that this could just be one step towards something that doesn't recognize anything like what we have now in Southwest Westfield. The other thing I would say is I know there were concerns about Pulte's ability to keep their promises to the people, because I heard the folks that lived in Kimballwick talking about this for some time, and much of that may have been resolved through conversations. But I will note that at the end of the trails by Shammick property, where we overlook from our side into the Kimballwick area, then when that was first done, that the ponds there had a lot of trees planted, and that those trees were giving somewhat of a break as well. Well, many of those have died now, and we're talking 2+ years, and there's not any replacement of any of those. So if that's the kind of care we're going to get in seeing that these plans are followed through, it's not there. So again, I would hope that you would vote no, but I do thank you for all your hard work on this, and I thank all the people that have put time into this. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Poland. Director Todd, do we have anyone else this evening? No? Mr. Pierce, you're up for our presentation on our street assets.
Good evening, councilors. For the record, Michael Pierce, City Engineer with Public Works. Here tonight to give a presentation and a little bit of insight into our asset management, specifically as it relates to our roadway network and the maintenance we do on that. Just to start with, wanted to give you a bit of background information. So the City of Westfield currently, as of today, has 302 center lane miles of road, which equates to 592 lane miles of road. To give you a perspective on that, Carmel, based on LTAP data from 2024, Carmel is at just over 1,100, Fisher's at 804, and Noblesville at just shy of 700. So we are the smallest, but we're catching up quickly. So our city, we've added an average of 11.8 center lane miles of road per year over the last 7 years. So just viewing the last 7 years, 27% of our total network has been built within that time frame. So our infrastructure is very young, in very good condition, but obviously as that ages, we're going to need to keep up with that maintenance and preserve those roads to the best of our ability. our average condition rating based on a PCI rating, which is a score out of 100. Ours is at 71.9, a weighted average of our roadway section. Based on LTAP data again from 2024, the Indiana statewide average, which is on a different scale. They use a PACER scale, which is 0 to 10, but the statewide average is at a 6. So we are above average, doing well in preserving our asset. Our roads are inspected every 2 years to give a new condition rating on those so we can keep up with our asset management. So what do we do to maintain our roadways? The overarching idea is that we keep our good roads in good condition while also treating our roads that are in a worse condition and bringing those up into a good condition. Generally, it's significantly cheaper to do preventative maintenance, so things like crack fill and preservative seal, like I've highlighted here, than it is to do a resurfacing. And if it falls into the condition rating where it needs a reconstruction, that's 3 to 4 times even more expensive than that. And I'll provide some numbers to that later. But what I really wanted to highlight, and I stole this from the LTAP asset management guide for cities and towns, is this deterioration curve to your right. So you can see the gray line is a typical deterioration curve for pavement. So you can see time on the bottom, condition on the vertical axis. As time goes on, that roadway degrades due to traffic, UV rays, just general deterioration. What a good asset management plan shows is doing preventative maintenance while the road's still in good condition to keep it in good condition for a longer time. So it essentially stretches out that curve, and you're paying much less to do the preventative maintenance than you are to do a full resurfacing or reconstruction, which is when you get down into this area. So the overarching idea is similar to a car or a house. You want to do oil changes, you want to rotate your tires, you want to do those sort of things rather than wait until your engine blows up and replace your engine. So maintenance techniques, I'll talk about obviously resurfacing and reconstruction. Crack fill, again, is preventative maintenance. We do striping on our roadways to make sure our roadways are striped and in safe driving condition. Preservative seal is another maintenance technique. And then we do have a few concrete streets, which we do just regular patching of the panels in there on a yearly basis. So again, preventative maintenance, this is where we want to focus on our good streets, keeping them in good condition. Crack fill, the goal is to crack fill each street once every 3 years. Historically, we had hired that out from a contractor to come in and do that. Over the last few years, we've actually had our street department do that work for us on most of our roadways, which has saved us a significant amount of money from hiring it out. So I would want to give recognition to them for that effort. Striping is an annual program, just like it sounds. We restripe our center lines and our edge of roadways. A lot of our roundabouts have markings that need to be refreshed from time to time. Preservative seal, that's a application. It's usually on newly resurfaced roads. So about a year or two after they're resurfaced, we'll go in and put a preservative seal over the top. It's somewhat similar to a seal coating your driveway. There are a little bit of differences to it, but the philosophy is the same in that you're sealing the voids on the top, increasing the flexibility of that pavement, and decreasing the porosity of the pavement so nothing penetrates that. You can also do that, a reapplication of that, typically it's about 7 years after the first application. So, and then as I mentioned, we have 3 subdivisions that are concrete currently, so we do regularly patch those sections of concrete that are deteriorated. Resurfacing and reconstruction, this is the most costly and invasive maintenance technique. Streets eventually will need that regardless of how much maintenance you do. But just as a general guideline, a local street typically is between 15 and 20 years is a rough average of when everything needs resurfaced. Collectors or arterials, usually slightly less than that because of the amount of traffic they get, heavier vehicles driving on those roads. So lifespan on those is slightly shorter. Reconstruction, that's needed when the pavements reach the end of its useful life. Try to minimize this as much as we can because this is extremely expensive. That include full reconstruction, which is removing the entire subgrade, putting new subgrade down, or there are some other techniques such as full depth reclamation, which is essentially almost stabilizing everything in place and then adding new asphalt to the top of that. So the condition ratings I spoke about, so we use what's called a pavement condition index, which is the scale of 0 to 100. The higher the number, the better the condition of the pavement. As of 2022, we have started hiring a consultant to do that. So as you can see in this picture on the right, they actually use a camera mounted on the back of a car. They drive every street in our city. They record defects in the road like potholes, block cracking, rutting, just general defects in the pavement. All of those are then put into their system. Formula spits out a number that's between 0 and 100 based on those defects in there. And then there's an interface that is provided to us, which I'll show you on this next slide. But not only does that keep track of all this information, it also allows us to do some exercises with budgeting and just general maintenance techniques and planning. So here's a typical interface that you can see. This is the interface they provide to us once all the streets are rated. As you can see on the side, there are condition ratings. So the darker green color, very good streets, closer to 100. As you get closer to the red or the gray, those are streets that are in need of more attention and some maintenance. Also, the capability of StreetScan and StreetLogix data, based on information we provide in the system and the decision tree that's mapped out, it can provide recommended maintenance on these streets. So whether something needs to be resurfaced, where we need to do crack fill, where we need to do a total reconstruction, that all can be programmed by the software. Now this isn't, I would say, I don't follow this to the T because we also want to take into account things like geographical proximity of things. We don't want to do one street in one subdivision, one street in the next, one street in the next. We want to, for the purposes of bidding and getting favorable bids, it's better to do larger sections geographically grouped together than it is spread out. But it is a useful tool for us when we do our asset management. So what do these actually look like in the field is probably a question I get quite a bit. So this is a typical roadway. Everybody's probably familiar with a brand new paved roadway. This would be an example of a PCI 100. As we get down the road and it ages for 3, 4, 5, 6 years, you start to develop cracks in the surface, and then we start our preventative maintenance on those roads. So this is probably a couple of crack fill cycles in. You'll start seeing the cracks longitudinally down the middle, some transverse cracks. But if we get in and address those with our preventative maintenance, hopefully that prolongs the life cycle of those roads. As we get down to a PCI of a 50 or around that neighborhood, that's when we really start looking at these for a more substantial maintenance activity such as resurfacing. So you can see on these that well-cracked filled in some of these examples actually, but they've done a good job. They've reached the end of their life cycle as far as at least the top layer of pavement, and that's when we start really considering it for resurfacing. As you get down to PCI 40, these again, similar vein. We may do a little bit deeper mill and resurface in this area. So typically in like a 60 or 50, you're looking at more like a 2-inch. You take the top layer of surface off, replace the new layer. In these cases, you may do 4 inches where you take actually out some of the intermediate or the binder course in there. And then as you can see on here, these are pavements that are totally failed and will need full reconstruction of some sort. I'll note that these are not in Westfield. These are not both in Westfield, so, yes. So, yeah, right, so, but yeah, hopefully not too many of these in Westfield. So the I guess $1 million question or $4 million question, as I'll show later, when will my street be resurfaced? This is a question I get probably the most when it comes to asset management. So there's a lot of criteria that I look at specifically when I'm trying to develop our program. So just to list a few on here, this is not all encompassing, but these are the bigger ones. Condition rating on a local street, usually it's around a 55 is the criteria I look at. Arterial might be 65. Arterial roadways obviously carry a lot more traffic. They have bigger vehicles on them, higher speeds, so we want to keep those in good condition. Age of the pavement, obviously that's more just comparing a couple streets versus one another. Traffic level and classification, as I said, arterial versus local. Pavement section, subgrade type. Some streets have less asphalt on them because they were built before our current standards were in place. So that's something that we have to consider when we're developing our resurfacing program as to are we going to have further issues if we just decide to do one treatment versus the other in there. Another big one is the effect of deferring maintenance. So if we decide not to do anything, what does that mean? In some cases, if a street has already reached the point where it needs to be resurfaced, but we have other priorities, waiting a year doesn't really change that. It still needs to be resurfaced. Now, we want to make sure we catch that before it goes from resurfacing to reconstruction, but can it wait a year, basically? And then also adjacent maintenance activities. So sometimes we'll have a capital project in that area where there's a street right next to it that needs to be resurfaced. Sometimes there's the ability to just lump that into that project and include it within that project just to have a new roadway throughout. We actually just did this at, for example, 196 and Grassy Branch. There was a section of Grassy Branch on the north and south side that needed resurfaced. We said just have the contractor do it while we were out there. Made the most sense. So, why is this important? Basically because it's expensive is one of the good answers. As you can see on here, just in the maintenance activities I've discussed tonight, based on our 2024-5 budget, we're at just over $4 million on maintenance activities. The bulk of that's in the resurfacing program. We're fortunate that this year we were able to get $1.5 million from Community Crossings through NDOT, which is a grant we apply for every year. Historically, that's been only $1 million. They upped it just for this 1 year, hoping that continues, but we will see. So that's a matching grant. We have to match. If we apply for 1.5, we also have to contribute 1.5. So crack fill, again, $210,000. That's mostly just buying the material, renting the machines, and then some small contractual services out of that as well. Striping, we've upped this year. Historically, I think we've probably been a little short on where we should be for the striping program, so we've really beefed that up this year. Preservative seal, $150,000. Again, that's on mostly newly resurfaced roadways. And then patching, again, we've beefed that one up a little bit to hopefully encourage some more competitive bidding on that project. So how much do these activities cost? So assuming a mile of our local street section, which is basically 27 feet from the inside of the curb to the inside of the other curb. So you do about 1 mile of that, 1 center lane mile of that. Crack fill is about $5,000 to $10,000. Preservative seal, basically about $20,000. 2-inch mill and resurface, as you can see, it jumps exponentially. We're at $211,000. 4-inch mill and overlay, again, $332,000. And as I said, once you get into the full reconstructions, $927,000. Now that number can vary a little bit depending on if you do, as I said, an FDR or full dig everything out and replace it. Obviously, that gets on the higher end. So with that, I'll open it up to any questions you might have.
Any questions this evening? Councilor Waniger.
Okay, so on your colored map that you had up there earlier that showed the PCI ratings for all the roads and the condition assessments associated with that, if that was the map from last summer for this year, and based on your cost per lane mile for each of those different conditions of what needed to be done to address those roads, how much money would you need?
That's a great question. This is actually a little bit outdated, but it does provide you the ability to produce a backlog. So I think we were, several million, tens of millions of dollars, if not maybe hundreds of millions. I don't have an exact number on that.
In other words, you're way short.
We have more. So we definitely have more maintenance than we have, which is part of why it's a little bit of an art and a science when we go to do a resurfacing program, because we have to choose the roadways that best fit. Obviously, we're not at a shortage for work to do.
That was kind of the point I was making, because I think we need to do more, invest in our roads and infrastructures, not only in our primary and secondary roads, but also within our subdivisions. When you talked about the 302 centerline miles of road, based on that, for funding from the state, do you only get paid per one single lane mile or lane mile each way?
I believe it's all lane miles.
It's just the one way, yeah.
Yeah.
So if you had a lane road, maybe a suicide lane in the middle or 2 lanes in each direction, you're only getting one
Single lane, yeah.
single lane mile. With kind of some of the things that I've noticed of late, and just kind of take note of these, on the line striping, prefer to see that earlier in the year, spring. I know you like to usually have that probably done after you do your crack sealing to, show the exposed lines, but hitting maybe the primary and secondary roads first, and then getting that line striping in early, because I hate to see the line striping occur at the end of the year, and the first snowfall comes, most of it gets plowed off.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think some of that comes from, we've tried to provide a larger window for that contractor because it is hard to get bidders on that project, and so they have procrastinated a little bit and put it toward the end of the year, but that's noted.
On your different types of maintenance activities, I didn't see, if I missed it, stone shoulders?
Stone shoulders, yeah, that's something that we do internally. So I didn't mention those things that we kind of do internally, but we do stone shoulders. Our street department also does a lot of our pothole filling, and they also recently invested in some, renting a machine that does patching. So they do that separately of anything that we kind of hire out.
Okay. And stone shoulders are good, but they're also bad because they build up over time and they hold water on the road. So just one note, Oak Ridge Road was paved earlier this year or last year, and stone shoulders were never put down. And I would recommend you drive that section of road and see basically the white line is now gone. It's broken off and fallen away. It's no longer there. And then also drive it right after a rain event, and you'll see probably 8 to 10 areas that stand a lot of water, not only for a day, but multiple days. So that stone shoulder where people have driven in has kind of built up on the side. So not only the maintenance of the stone shoulders, but also breaking that away so the water gets away from the road, because we know probably the worst thing for a road is the water aspect of it. And then concrete subdivisions, I went and drove a couple of those subdivisions here lately, and I saw them also while I was campaigning. And I think you guys would agree, when you guys haven't been in this position as well as long, but they're adequately insufficient, and we're really behind on those. And I think, speaking from my standpoint as a council member, I would support in the next budget cycle to put more emphasis on those concrete roads and get those caught up to speed, because those are pretty bad in those subdivisions there. So, no, I appreciate what you guys do. I probably will get with you and Jonathan, just have a further conversations. I'd like to see more of this kind of programmed out. I know it changes from year to year based on weather, rain conditions, cold weather, and things like that over the years, but kind of project that out year by year, what it would look like, and then how it would continue to change, and so we can see patterns associated with that. That's all I've got.
Any other, Councilor Dart?
So we've got about a $4 million budget approximately. Any idea what percentage of that will be going to residential neighborhoods? Because I think as council members, that's probably the majority of calls that we get, that whether it's a concrete neighborhood or paved neighborhoods, and they're kind of chomping at the bit, knowing that spring's around the corner, and they're saying, are we on the list? Are we next? And so what percentage is that, and then when will that list be released for 2025?
Yeah, actually, our resurfacing package for this year is actually out to bid right now. So as soon as we get those bids back, and the way we structure it is there are several alternatives. So based on how our bid prices come in, we have the flexibility to award either none of those alternatives, one of them, two of them, several of them. So once we open, I believe our bids are due the February 19th. So right as soon as those are open, we'll know where we can go, and I can provide that to you, obviously. As far as a percentage, I don't know off the top of my head what the percentage would be. I know we are doing a large section of Village Farms. I think that one's probably close to 800,000 just in Village Farms. I know Countryside, we're doing Countryside Boulevard and a lot of the larger streets in Countryside, so there's a significant investment in there. I can get you the exact numbers, but I would say that there's probably more subdivision streets this year than there are arterials.
Thank you. Actually,
Councilor
yeah, before we turn it over, just one thing also, just from my standpoint as well, I know I would support as development comes in that we don't end up with issues like Osborne Trail on Spring Mill Road or like Chatham on Tomlinson Road. And we've seen that over the years. In using those road impact fees, what they're supposed to be used for is building our roads around those areas and not for landscaping on State Road 32, like our prior council did, which I still don't know if that's legal or not. But utilizing those funds for those improvements around those subdivisions or where those developments are occurring.
Councilor McCarty.
I just wanted to share my appreciation for the presentation and getting this information out to the public. I know over the last year since taking office and a little bit before that whenever I've had a question, you've been there to answer, as well as members on the team as well. And also when potholes have popped up or whatever it may be, we can go to the portal and get things taken care of pretty quickly. So I just want to thank you and the team for everything that you do.
Appreciate it.
See no other questions.
I've got a
Thank you,
couple of
Ms.
comments.
Oh, Mayor?
I don't need Michael up here for this part, but you can have a seat, Michael, if you want. Just a couple of things. First off, and I know we've all talked about, but I think it's important since this is in the public sphere to make the comment. As you guys call us with complaints around roads, this is what we're using to make decisions. We're trying not to make it off of emotion. We're trying to use data to drive decisions that we make because we can quickly chase our tail, and it compounds over time. If you spend money on roads that we could still get a couple more years out of, over a 20-year lifespan, it can get very costly. Keep in mind that this does not, the funding that we set aside for road paving is not in that $181 million infrastructure plan that we've created. So add that to that annually. It gets expensive real fast. I'll make this comment for the public more than you guys because we've been talking about it ad nauseum. There's legislation right now out there that could create problems for us in getting these community crossroads grants. The state wants to mandate that we create a new tax, a wheel tax, to help pay for road infrastructure costs. We're the only city right now in Hamilton County that does not have that. And my intentions were to not go after that tax, but we may be forced to deal with this sooner rather than later, depending on what this legislation comes back. Because as we discussed, the community crossroad grants would go away if we don't pass it. And that's about $10 million of road improvements that we'd lose over, say, the life of a decade. So for future conversations, but planting that seed and putting it out there in the public. And that's really about it. I just wanted to make sure that and also as Michael said, we'll be issuing out in the springtime what the game plan is for our roads. And I would recommend for you all, not to tell you do your job, but when I was a counselor, I would get oftentimes complaints on the back end. So when you get that plan, if I'm you, I would spot check it. We can provide you when it's going to happen, when it gets done. I've gone out in neighborhoods and cul-de-sacs where it was retaining water because it wasn't level. Where you get at the edge of the curb, a 1 or 2 inch lip, which can be a twist your ankle hazard, or it also gets chipped up easily, and all of a sudden you get potholes on that seam with your curbs. So we want to trust our vendors, but we also want to verify. So I'd highly recommend that you make that a routine in your job because it's expensive. And if they don't do a great job, if they don't do a proper job, we're going to be paying for it in the long run. And that's it.
Thank you, Mayor. Any other comments this evening? Seeing none, we're going to go ahead and move to old business, which is ordinance 2445, Claiborne Farms, Kimblewick, Phase 3 PUD. I think we have Mr. Collingwood here this evening to do a presentation.
Yep, thank you, President, and good evening, members of the council. For the record, Ryan Collingwood with the Community Development Department. The item in front of you this evening is the adoption consideration of the Claiborne Farms, Kimblewick Phase 3 Planning and Development District. This rezone request is to establish the zoning for an extension of the existing Kimblewick residential community. The subject real estate is about 87 acres in size and is generally located north of and adjacent to 151st Street and east of Shelbourne Road. Since the petition was last in front of the City Council, there have been significant modifications to the project proposal, generally comprising of landscaping, density, and amenity discussions, and I will let the petitioner's representative speak a little bit more detail on what has occurred throughout the rezone process. This petition had its council first reading on August 26th and a public hearing with the Advisory Plan Commission on September 3rd of last year. The petition's first APC workshop discussion occurred at the APC's October 21st meeting, while a second workshop discussion occurred at the November 16th meeting. This item is up for its adoption consideration vote in front of the City Council this evening, as the item did receive an 8-to-1 favorable recommendation via the APC in December of last year. The petitioner and their representative are both here this evening. They will be providing a brief update of the finalized material for vote tonight and are available to answer any questions subsequently. Thank you.
Thank you, Ryan. John?
Let's leave this slide up here. I'll go with this slide. Good evening, members of the council. For the record, John Dobashewitz with Nelson and Frankenberger. We represent the petitioner Pulte Homes of Indiana. Rex Ramage and Dave Compton with Pulte are both here this evening. As noted by staff, the request this evening is for approval of the Kimblewick Phase 3 PUD. The proposal received a favorable recommendation from the Plan Commission in December at their meeting by an 8-to-1 vote. At this time, I wanted to provide a brief summary of the enhancements and modifications made part of the review process. As noted by staff, the original plan was for an existing, in addition to Kimblewick residents served by amenities. The proposal was to have the addition served by amenities within the Kimblewick that exists today. The revised proposal will include additional amenities, of which there are 3 options included in the PUD. The slides that I have are available in the overall packet. It's a couple 100-page packet. We don't need to necessarily go to those slides, but if staff can find those, we can track along with those. It was in that overall council packet. Of the 3 options which exist, option 1 would be for $1 million contribution to the HOA reserve fund of Kimblewick. Option 2 would be a $600,000 contribution to the reserve fund and dedication of Block 1. Block 1 is identified here within the development to accommodate additional amenities. And third would be a $100,000 contribution to the HOA reserve fund and the dedication of the existing sales center and adjacent lot, which includes parking, which is adjacent to the existing amenity facility. Enhanced buffers and tree preservation were also part of the proposal. The original plan proposed a 50-foot tree preservation common area surrounding the perimeter of the real estate. Thank you. If you can track along, I'll go slide by slide. As you can see on the plan on the right, the ordinance now requires a 200-foot buffer to the west, 100 feet to the north, both including tree preservation, and there is a 150-foot tree preservation area to the east adjoining the existing Kimblewick development. As noted earlier, there's also a 50-foot tree preservation area along the north side of 151st Street on the subject real estate. As revised, the plan will now include and preserve 27 acres of existing trees and preservation. That's approximately 31% of the original acreage. Additionally, Pulte has agreed to maintain a minimum 150-foot buffer area along the east perimeter of the site rather than an allowed reduction as authorized under the PUD. This enhancement is included and memorialized in written commitments that the council has before you this evening, which were provided to staff and made part of the zoning request. The third slide, please. The original plan called for 220 lots with access of 20 lots to Shelbourne Road, as shown here, out to Shelbourne Road. The revised plan removed this narrow acreage out to Shelbourne Road and associated lots. The number of Del Webb lots was also reduced from 202 down to 150, a reduction of over 25%. Slide 4, please. The original plan called for a minimum of 27% open space, and the revised plan now includes a minimum of 50% open space. To put that in perspective, the UDO otherwise would require 15%, so we're about 3 times the overall required open space as provided in the UDO. This increase was achieved as a result of enhanced perimeter buffer areas, a reduction in the number of homes, and shifting ponds internal to the site to preserve more trees along the perimeter. Slide 5, please. The location of the entrance onto 151st Street was modified to a location which wasn't directly across from existing lots. You can see on the left proposed to be across from lots, and then the image on the right was the relocated space. Once that was relocated, there was additional concerns mentioned by residents, and the latest enhancements Pulte made to its plan was to elevate the berms on the south side of 151st Street to better screen headlights and plant 10 additional trees. The 10 additional trees would be on top of the 28 that were already agreed to as part of the zoning that was reviewed by the Plan Commission. Again, this latest enhancement is memorialized in the written commitments that the council has for consideration. Slide 7, please. The location of the trail connection to the amenity facility was adjusted to an agreed-upon location within the buffer area, rather than having that trail run adjacent to the existing pond, which is part of the Kimblewood community, based on continued discussion with adjoining neighbors. Slide 8, please. This slide addresses added efforts to fill in gaps in tree preservation areas. The areas noted on the left are those areas. The proposal on the right, which is part of the ordinance today, which would be the addition of 26 additional trees in those 2 spaces. Slide 9, please. This slide addresses concern raised over access to lots closest to 151st Street, which resulted in modifications to the entry median, as well as enhanced tree preservation at the entrance to the neighborhood. So the exhibit on the right shows in dark green that additional tree preservation that's going to be done adjacent to the entrance, and you can see the shortened median and bumping back lot 1. So there's not a condition where someone were to enter the neighborhood and have to turn around the median to access their individual lot. Slide 10. This slide addresses road improvements and city impact, and Pulte's agreed to improve 151st Street, similar to the cross-section that you see there across the existing Kimblewick, that pavement cross-section out to Shelbourne Road. While not proposed as part of our development, if desired by the city, this new development would generate approximately $1 million in tax revenue in annual TIF, which could be used, if desired by the city in the future, for infrastructure improvements above and beyond what's already been agreed to. Kimblewick, as an age-restricted residential neighborhood under HOPA, will contribute no additional school children to Westfield Washington schools while paying all of the same applicable property taxes, including referendum assessments, as all other neighborhoods within the community do. In conclusion, based on all the enhancements and modifications to the request, there's been significant public support for the request shared with the City Council. As noted, Pulte's made written commitments to address final buffer and width and landscaping enhancements with the applicable in addition to the PUD standards. It's in consideration of public support, as well as these written commitments and the favorable recommendation made by the Plan Commission, that we request approval of the PUD ordinance this evening. With that, I'll conclude. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Any questions, comments this evening?
Just real quick before, because the presentation was getting uploaded to the screen, could you go back to slide number 2 to touch on the amenities? I just want to make sure nothing was missed.
First slide.
Did you?
We did review it. I just reviewed it before the slide was
okay.
up. So
Okay,
there's 3
sorry.
options. The options that exist there would be elected by the existing HOA, and it's either the $1 million contribution to the HOA reserve fund, the Lot 1 and $600,000 contribution, or the third, which is dedication of the existing model home that would be a use for additional meeting space and the parking added at that location.
Thank you for covering that again. I just want to make sure the visual is there for everyone in the audience. First, having gone through this process over the last 8 months now, I want to thank members of the public, residents, the neighbors, Pulte, my fellow APC members, council members, staff. I mean, just, again, this was a collective effort to get us to where we are today. Is everyone satisfied? No, absolutely not. Am I 100% satisfied? Absolutely not. But going back to the beginning, I was holistically against this proposal after taking my drone up and just seeing how much trees are there, so on and so forth. But because of the cooperative nature of working together, getting it to where it is today, and being able to address really the three biggest concerns that I had, which was tree preservation, which reality is that the landowner wants to sell, and it is their right today to be able to clear the entire property, and then we have no trees there. So it's really unprecedented to be able to have the 150 feet, 200 feet of tree preservation that would both serve the new residents, the existing residents on both the east and west sides of the property. Second, looking at this slide here, amenities, because that was a big point of discussion from the residents as well. Providing these three options where they're able to make their own decision going forward, I think that's great as well. And then third, the infrastructure out there on 151st Street. I mean, you drive that, we just had the presentation by Mr. Pierce, it is very much so needed to get improvements out there. So because of those three accomplishments of being able to, again, everyone work together, cooperate with this, and then also really throughout the process we had at APC public hearing and just further messages from there. It was over 200 pages initially of correspondence from residents. That's a lot. That's the most that I have seen thus far in my tenure of being on planning commission and city council as well. And then since December, where we received recommendation at APC, it feels like we've received an additional 100 or so pages, and many of the people that had first been part of the process reached out again in saying that they were now supportive of the project. So again, I think that speaks volumes to how far this project has come from many of us not wanting it to now being in support of it. So I just want to, again, thank everyone, the petitioner included, for the work done on this. So thank you.
Yeah, I would further corroborate a lot of what Victor is saying. I think it's quite clear this is a controversial project, and 200 to 300 residents weighed in, and we appreciate the thoughtful responses, and I think I read all of them, or at least I tried to. It's a very difficult decision. I think one of the more difficult ones we've made, at least that I've made. I think Pulte has done a lot, and I've heard through some emails they've made concessions, but I would just note to Pulte that where we are today and to the rest of the development world is probably where we should have started. This is the better way to develop with the buffers, safe privacy, the tree lines, the tree preservation. Those are things we probably should have started with. Just wanted to make that note. I think, though, where we stand today, it's a pretty good project. Not everybody's going to be happy with 300 people. I mean, it's pretty much split down the middle for for and against, and whatever way we vote, it's not going to make everyone happy. But how do we have to vote, and looking at the overall project as it sits today, I think it's responsible growth, and I think it does leave an extensive amount of these trees, as a lot of the residents wanted, and I think it's a good project moving forward.
I'd like to make a few comments. First of all, this is the most active, contentious, and vocal PUD that's come before the council in the last year. And I want to thank everybody for being professional, being good listeners, and being understanding of all sides, even if you don't agree with the position of the person speaking. I want to thank Pulte for working with the residents and being flexible and meeting the needs of the Kimballwick residents. Having said that, I'm on the other side of the two gentlemen that just spoke, the two counselors that just spoke. And I say that for a few reasons. Number one is the comprehensive plan is in place, and it is zoned as such with larger lots. And when the homeowners or the landowners purchased that property and built their homes, they did so with the understanding of the comprehensive plan. And I'm a little bit worried that while the comprehensive plan is a guideline, these people built and purchased their property in good faith. And if a decision like this is made to put up more homes, just because we want more homes, and we've got a large national builder with a lot of dollars to make things happen for residents, anything can happen in the future with a comprehensive plan. Number two is that, or the next thing is that, as Mr. Koss mentioned, we've got 100 acres of woods, of forest. Tell me where else in Westfield we're going to see that type of trees, that amount of trees. And we're going to knock down the majority of those trees for a housing development. Yes, that happens. But Westfield, in my opinion, I've been here 35 years, so I love Westfield, but it is farmland. It is quite farmland. You don't have a lot of trees like this anymore. And we're going to knock down the majority of these trees for a housing development. And while I believe that Pulte builds a great product, I want to go on record by saying Pulte builds a great product, there's nothing unique or special about this development. There really isn't. The homes are going to be well built, the streets are going to be great, the amenities are going to be great, but you can go into 20 to 30 different developments within Westfield and see the same thing. And so my point is that this is not needed at this time in the city of Westfield. Or if you really feel it's needed, go find a farm field somewhere else to build. But to take down 100 acres or move 100 acres of trees is kind of it's kind of short-sighted. And yes, I understand the Kimblewick residents going, well, this is the best proposal that we've had, or the best that we think we can have. I don't believe that. If you look at Woodwind, we now have a great product going in Woodwind with Old Town Development. But that was the third or fourth iteration of that area. And so people are worried, well, the homeowner's going to knock down the trees if it doesn't get approved. Or we don't know who might come in after Pulte. It's always got to still come through this council and come through the city. So I wouldn't be worried about taking the first offer that's put in front of you. And the last statement I would make is that, as many of you know, the comprehensive plan is being updated right now. And it will be finished by the end of 2026. That'll be here before you know it. And it would be my opinion that this council and this city administration wait until the comprehensive plan is updated and finished before additional decisions are made. Yes, housing is needed in Westfield, but we are not desperate for housing. And we are not desperate for just another neighborhood like this. So thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Dart. Any other comments? Councilor Waniger? Aaron? Chad, would you like to make any comments?
Yeah, I got a lot. I appreciate Pulte going back to the drawing board. I don't appreciate Pulte not bringing their best foot forward the first time around, kind of like what Joey said. This one makes me scratch my head. We're sitting there, we're listening to the 51 residents' emails of Kimblewick that live in density, that are voting for more density. It has no effect on them, in my personal opinion. What I feel like we're doing a disservice to is the citizens that are around Kimblewick, that have the 5, 10, 15, 20 acre lots. To me, that's disappointing. Yeah, they made some concessions. That's great. I struggle to figure out where our balance is as a city. I know we all want to see, the best for the city, but at what balance? Like, I live in a neighborhood with 3 acres. Let's say I sell my house and I wanted to go find a 5 acre tract or a 10 acre tract to build something on. Where do I go? Sheridan? Like, are we gonna leave out that sector of our community? That's what really has me scratch my head on this one. And I think it's easy in the short term to sit there and pump the brakes and say, hey, look, we've got a comprehensive plan coming out. Supposedly we have all these things being put in motion, these committees and everything else. And this plan should be done at the end of 25, ready for a 26 commitment. And I know at the last council meeting, the lady said, oh, you can't stop, but why can't we? Why can't we stop for a second when it steps outside of the zone of neighborhoods and housing? Why can't we stop for a second and say, you know what? What's 12 months going to hurt? Is it going to hurt Pulte? Is that ground still going to be for sale in 12 months? You know, is that a possibility that we can just say, you know what? Let's just pump the brakes, pull the e-brake 12 months, let the comprehensive plan come out and see what comes of that. If the comprehensive plan determines that Westfield's vision has changed and that we don't really see a fit for estate style lots, okay, then bring it back. To the Kimblewick residents that think that, in my personal opinion, just by reading all the emails, it feels like there was a little bit of fear mongering going on of saying, hey, if this doesn't go, you never know what's going to go. Well, guess what? Just like John said, this stuff's going to come back in front of council. So if this is the sort of thing that's coming in front of council that we're sitting there going, you know, we're going to spend 8 months trying to figure out if this is a good project or bad project, who says that that's not going to happen again? We're absolutely going to pick this apart. Whether it's Pulte, Beezer, Fisher, it doesn't matter. And I just feel like that anybody, really, at the end of the day, anybody that says yes to this project at the current moment with the comprehensive plan being worked on is not really using their best judgment to say, hey, let's just slow down for a second. Let's put an actual plan in place. We've got, I was just looking at John's presentation, and, you know, we've got a 150-foot buffer for the Kimblewick residents, and we've got a 100-foot buffer for the north residents. Why don't we switch that? Why, John, why can't we get a 200-foot buffer on the north and 50-foot on the east? Can we do that? Those guys get to keep their view, right? But we're going to shorten the view on the north side. 100 feet in the fall, you can absolutely see through the trees. A buffer is better than none. I will give you that. But just the way that this project has gone about, I don't love it. I really don't. I'll let somebody else comment.
Thank you, Councilor Huff. Any other comments? Mayor, you wanted to?
Yeah, I just want to say a few things. I don't typically weigh in on zoning. I don't plan on doing so tonight too much. I just want to, a couple of things I want to make sure everybody understands. First off, trees being removed will be replaced. We do have, you remember, we passed a tree preservation program, and these trees aren't going away, never to be seen again in Westfield. Yes, it will be a new tree, but they will have to pay, Pulte will have to pay a sum of money into our tree preservation program, whether that's planted here or in other areas of the city moving forward, to be determined. Second off, I've mentioned this before, I appreciate Chad, I appreciate John, what you guys are saying. We're not shutting the city down for the next 12 months as we go through this. You can vote no on every project until that happens. I respect that. That is your right as a counselor. But keep in mind, folks, and this didn't happen when you were on council, I sat on council and made it known that our schools planted a new school building outside our comprehensive plan. That set in motion a lot of things that we're seeing now. It's not the only thing. The first Kimblewick project was outside the comprehensive plan as well. We've been creeping outside the comprehensive plan for probably 4 to 6 years. And unfortunately, it's a result of us not being diligent in keeping up with what the comprehensive plan asked for, which was routine maintenance and revisiting of that. So I appreciate you guys. We're stuck with a really tough situation here, and I'll respect however you guys vote. Not going to weigh in anymore. The reason I wanted to say a few words is I want to compliment Councilor Tam. I have never seen a councilor spend more time on a project, listening to residents, walking the ground, hearing both pros and cons, sometimes getting a little contested, a little hot under the collar, and he took it like a champ. He spent hours upon hours listening to his district, and that is what a city councilor is supposed to do. So thank you, Councilor Tam. However you vote, I appreciate the effort you put into this because you represented your fellow councilors very well in how you presented yourself.
Any other comments this evening?
I mean, Scott, like real quick, you know, I know that a comprehensive plan is supposed to be fluid. But on the comprehensive plan, are we like I stated before, if Chad Huff wants to go out and find a 10-acre tract that I feel like I'm going to be somewhat safeguarded for the next 20, 30 years, like where do I go? Where am I going to go? And if the answer is yes, there's going to be something, then when is that going to be established?
Yeah, and that's a great question. This comprehensive plan is very different than what was done in the past. And keep in mind, folks, the comprehensive plan is not going to say on every parcel of land what we want from a density perspective, what have you. It's going to say, here's your residential areas, here's your commercial areas, and identify pockets for different types of development. It's not going to give you a blueprint where it's going to say this parcel of land we want large lot neighborhoods. That's not what a comprehensive plan does. I've always told people this, and this is controversial when I say it, but I'm going to say it. You have the right to enjoy the view. You don't have the right to control it unless you own it. So if you're somebody out there looking for a large swath of land, my recommendation is look at what's happening in Hamilton County, folks. Westfield is just phase 4 of what's been happening. We've seen it in Carmel. We've seen it in Fishers. It's happening so much in Noblesville. They just annexed a second township. These townships are getting consumed in Hamilton County. They just are, whether you like it or not. I grew up in a small town. I moved to Westfield because it was a small town, but it is what it is now. And when you look at demographic shifts happening all over the globe, quite frankly, not just here in Indiana, people are moving towards the metropolitan areas. They're banning the small towns, and it's putting pressure on the donut counties like we have here in Hamilton County. It's not whether I like it or not, it's just that's the reality. So when we look at this comprehensive plan, we're going to be looking at trends, demographic shifts, and we're going to develop a plan that's going to say what's residential, what's commercial, where things happen. But it'll be up to future councils. It's never going to give you a complete roadmap to say, for this young man's house, if he decides to sell it, you don't let him sell it for anything less than 5-acre parcels. That's not what a comprehensive plan does. The last one developed rural, new suburban, old suburban. It was a whole different model because we were a little tiny town that was becoming a city. We know the trajectory of what's happening, and we're going to plan it out in a much different fashion than what we have before.
I don't disagree with that. I think that, look, I've got a 16-acre parcel of ground in Westfield, right? Right now, can I go put an apartment complex on it? Nope. I've got to get it rezoned, right? So now, like with that thought process, in my opinion, it's the same way as saying is, hey, you know, Chad, you can't do what you want with your property because you got to get it rezoned. That's no different than these people's property. We're not saying that they can't sell it. That's not what we're saying at all. And to bring that full circle, like, what do we have in downtown Westfield, right? We have a master plan. What do we have at Grand Park? We have a master plan. So my point is why we're putting focus on the downtown as a master plan and why we're putting focus on Grand Park as a master plan. Like, can we not add some rural, like we're not even talking about huge parcels. We're talking about 3 acres, 5 acres, 10 acres. So can we not add a master plan to the city to say, hey, look, this is master plan. This is going to stay this way. This is what we're looking for. And really, it's really a note to the developers to say, hey, look, this section, that section, whether it be southwest, northwest, wherever you guys deem it appropriate, those guys know that ground is off limits. Stay out of it. That's it. I scratch my head here and just think that, you know, that we can have a good balance of all if we pay attention to it all. And right now, I don't think we're paying attention to it all. I'm done.
No, and I respect where you're at with the chat.
Thank you, Councilor Huff. Councilor Deppner.
Just one quick comment. So Councilor Huff and Councilor Dart obviously make very good points, lots of points and very good ones, and you can see why this is so difficult. Just one thing to point out that I just didn't say in the beginning, and I'm sure a lot of the homeowners around there know this, but maybe not. we did receive a formal letter from the owner of the property. It indicated a plan on how they were going to raise this timber if this was not approved. And I don't vote based upon a threat or anything like that, but I just think it's somewhat naive to dismiss that could be a reality. And if that is a reality, now you're sitting there with 100 acres of no trees.
Well, I'd like to add that this council should not be influenced by a landowner and what they plan to do or not plan to do with their property. And however this decision goes up here, whether it goes for the project or against it, I would ask that the residents of Westfield do not hold this council responsible for what that landowner does. And if that landowner chooses to strip their property, they're the ones that should get the brunt of the comments from the residents. And having you said what you said, Mayor, if this landowner does strip their property of all of their trees and it becomes a development with something else, under the Land Preservation Act, I guess they're going to put more trees there anyway.
Well, yeah, no, actually, this is a tree farm. They harvest trees. That's what the business is. If they strip every tree off of that property, that's well within their rights.
Mr. Costa, that wasn't a tree farm, was it, to be harvested?
Yeah. Yes, it was.
100 years out to start selective cutting, never clear cutting.
Correct. So we could argue this all night long, but appreciate all the comments from all the council members for sure. Thank you.
First, I wanted to thank residents, frankly, with some of which has been said, and also counselors as well, for thoughtful, comprehensive discussions, also well-written commentary. Frankly, many of you in this room have welcomed me into your house, your barns. You've inundated me with phone calls. They get email. I get about 5 times their email, which is great. It is also a responsibility that I take very serious in terms of being entrusted with the public trust. I do think that the area will be residential in one way, shape, or another. There is private property rights, both for everyone in the area. It has been said earlier this evening that the comp plan is a guide. We did get not just one letter from existing parcel owners, but actually both. One that now owns what was a tree farm and is still classified such, that they plan to do what they will plan to do. At the same time, I agree with Councilor Dart and others that, and as well as Councilor Deppner, that we recognize it, doesn't necessarily influence it. Trying to balance and respect all interests in all public policy discussions is a classic what is happening here. The trail locations, can you pull that up, John, or I don't know who's driving right now? It's up. Yes, there we go, on 7. So don't, just move Counselor Huff. I like seeing him, so. But I like Chad, by the way. I don't know. He's my friend. So I just wanted to point out that originally there was no trail whatsoever. Then there was a trail proposed. And that trail, frankly, was going to be along the banks of the Williams Creek wetland, which is frankly beautiful, but let's keep that to the residents, not to everybody else's. There is a natural path that trail exists. Where that trail is marked on that map is actually due to a trail that is there, and also when you make a turn, if you look up to your right, you'll see a deer stand. I've been back there, probably illegally, a few times. But also, 2 people walked that trail with representatives from Pulte along with me. Vern and Tom are both here. And frankly, their homes look out at the wetland. And they wanted a trail, and a lot of residents wanted further trails, but they didn't necessarily want to stare at it. So it's actually tucked away inside trees. If you look at the west, which western boundary, which I don't know if we have a map that represents where the trails are, but frankly, that's the only trail. So if you go to the west and you look at some of the, and you want to just scroll up, Kevin, to the first part where you see the overall map, you actually see no trails on the western side of that to actually, frankly, um, that you actually have no trails there. Some residents wanted that, but also some folks in the larger lots there did not. So you're trying to find a balance, just to use an example from the trails. You do preserve 50% open space. You do take a look at where the three options are in terms of amenities. They continue to also have commitment letters. I know a couple residents wanted to make sure that that was in writing. It was in writing. John's referenced it multiple times. Director Todd and his team also has it in terms of where we're at there. I think Woodwind had 4 proposals. Every developer that's proposed all tell me that their proposal was better than the current proposal, so take that for what it is. I think I'm with Councilor Dart on that one though, by the way. But that's where I just wanted to take a moment and thank people for really having, sometimes in people's family rooms, we had neighbors disagreeing with one another, but yet no one called anyone a name. They respected each other's opinion. It was actually kind of refreshing. We're not like the U.S. Congress, which is kind of nice, or the State House too. But the reality is people have every right to their thoughts, their opinions, and frankly, there's nothing more emotionally charged than where they live and what that may or may not impact their lives. And it is not an easy situation, but it's also something that we're expected to handle. So the APC did what the APC does. Frankly, I like to negotiate, so we negotiated. So it was also something that trying to figure out if this gets approved, that it would be something that could potentially find some sort of balance. It was said earlier, and then frankly, all of you are figuring it out, there's going to be people upset on both sides. It does not make their thoughts of what should happen any less. Frankly, it just means that that's democracy, and unfortunately, decisions have to be made. So with that, we need a motion and a second.
I'll make a motion to approve ordinance 2445, Claiborne Farms, Kimblewick Phase 3 PUD.
Second.
We have a motion made by Councilor McCarty, seconded by Councilor Waniger. I'm hoping and praying there's no other future discussion.
Victor McCarty.
Yes.
Oh, I'm sorry. Did you want to say call the roll, or am I good?
You're good.
Patrick Tam.
Yes.
Kurt Wanninger.
Yes.
John Dart.
No.
Joe Deppner.
Yes.
Noah Herron.
No.
Chad Huff.
Absolutely not.
Motion carries 4-3.
Thank you. We'll move on to ordinance 2504, which is the Common Council of the City of Westfield, Indiana, authorizing and approving an additional appropriation from the operating balance of the general fund. This will be presented by Danielle Carey-Tolan this evening.
Do you want to wait a second, Counselor Tam? Okay, making sure. Good evening, council members. For the record, Danielle Carey-Tolan here to present your next 3 items, and then I will be back before you again, so hopefully we can get through this quickly. Before you, the first one is the additional appropriation for $22,015. This is to cover the financial responsibility for the maintenance contract for the interlocal agreement that you guys passed between the township and the library for just grounds maintenance. Do you have any questions?
Do we have any questions this evening? This is old business, so it's up for adoption this evening. We need a motion and a second.
Make a motion to approve ordinance 2504 for the additional appropriation.
Second.
We have a motion made by Councilor Waniger, seconded by Councilor Dart. Seeing any other discussion, may we call the roll?
Kurt Wanninger.
Yes.
John Dart.
Yes.
Joe Deppner.
Yes.
Noah Herron.
Yes.
Chad Huff.
Yes.
Victor McCarty.
Yes.
Patrick Tam.
Yes.
Motion carries 7-0.
Thank you. Next order of business is ordinance 2505, which is Common Council of the City of Westfield, Indiana, authorizing and approving additional appropriation of funds from the Sports Campus Operating Fund. Danielle.
Yes, this is again before you for adoption consideration tonight. This is $3,254,261. This is an appropriation to extend the coverage of utilities, services, and other outstanding staff costs. I know that I've provided, and Marla has provided some Excel documents, but I'm happy to answer any questions.
Part of this, of the three, is also our $2 million.
Escrow?
Right.
Yes.
Just wanted the public to hear that. Any questions from the council this evening?
One question on the appropriation lines. I think I mentioned this last time. They're all rounded up. I know as the numbers come in, those payments will be made. Any additional monies that's left over, does that stay in the general fund or will that go back to the general fund?
So those will stay in the reserves under the 640 fund, yes.
Okay.
This is up for final consideration this evening. We need a motion and a second.
Make a motion to approve ordinance 25-05 for additional appropriations for the sports campus operating fund.
Second.
We have a motion made by Councilor Waniger, second by Councilor McCarty. Any further discussion? Seeing none, may we call the roll?
Patrick Tam?
Yes.
Kurt Wanninger?
Yes.
John Dart?
Yes.
Joe Deppner?
Yes.
Noah Herron?
Yes.
Chad Huff?
Yes.
Victor McCarty?
Yes.
Motion carries 7-0.
Next up for order of business is ordinance 2509, which is the Common Council of the City of Westfield, Indiana, authorizing and approving additional appropriations of funds from the Mayor's Grand Gala Fund. Danielle, there seems to be a streak. You
I know.
three-peated it, unlike the Chiefs.
Correct, exactly. Again, for your adoption
Bad dad
consideration
joke, sorry.
tonight
Too soon?
is a appropriation for $499,900.60 for the Grand Gala. This is to pay out to the Advancing Westfield Foundation. This is the funds that was remaining from the gala. And this has a contract to repay the city by the end of 2027 of the $160,000.
Any questions or discussion this evening?
Just thank you, Danielle, for putting together, Danielle and Caitlin for putting together the grant agreement that outlines, how the board and the foundation can spend those dollars. And as you mentioned, there is a sentence that talks about repaying the dollars that the council approved last year to seed the gala, and that will be paid back over the next 3 years. It is our wish, I think, and our desire that this gala continues to be very, very well-attended and profitable to give to local organizations, local nonprofits. So we don't want to feel like we're unappreciative of what the city is doing, but we did agree a year ago that we would loan, if you will, the city the dollars to get this jump-started, and you guys are off to a good start, so thank you.
Any other conversation this evening? I did want to second Councilor Dart for that, but also thank Caitlin for finding a great solution, as you normally do. Not always. We'll keep you hanging. But thank you. Any further discussion? Seeing none, may we call the roll? Oh, we need to make a motion. Yeah, I'm just jumping. The Chiefs joke I thought was really good, by the way. But we need a motion and a second this evening.
Motion.
Go ahead.
Motion to approve ordinance 25-09, appropriating funds from the mayor's gala fund.
Second.
We have a motion made by Councilor Dart, seconded by Councilor Waniger. Seeing no other discussion, may we call the roll?
John Dart?
Yes.
Joe Deppner?
Yes.
Noah Herron?
Yes.
Chad Huff?
Yes.
Victor McCarty?
Yes.
Patrick Tam?
Yes.
Kurt Wanninger?
Yes.
Motion carries 7-0.
Thank you. Next up for our order of business is ordinance 2470, the Grand Universe. I don't believe Dane's here, but we have Director Todd making a presentation this evening.
Thank you, Mr. President. For the record, Kevin Todd with the Community Development Department. The item before you this evening for adoption consideration is known as the Grand Universe Planning and Development, which would replace the existing Links Planning and Development ordinance on approximately 66 acres located between 191st Street and 186th Street, generally east of the Maryland Trail and west of Chad Hill Drive. As you may recall, this item received its first reading at your November 11th, 2024 City Council meeting and held a public hearing at the December 2nd, 2024 Advisory Plan Commission meeting. There was a workshop held at the January 21st Plan Commission meeting and was forwarded to the council with a unanimous 6-0 favorable recommendation at the February 3rd Plan Commission meeting. As such, this item, as mentioned, is eligible for adoption consideration this evening. Since the first reading, there have been some modifications to the ordinance. A full list can be seen in the staff report in your packet, but some of the highlights include removing language that inferred Tomlinson Road south of 191st Street being private. While this is still possible, a final determination would be a collaboration effort between multiple city departments on that and the petitioner. Also, maximum building height has been established for each of the districts. And the last big highlight that I wanted to mention is the prohibited land use list was updated to further include additional uses and make certain uses permitted with additional restrictions. So with that, representatives from the Grand Universe team are here this evening. I believe they would like to make a statement or two and will be available for questions. Thanks.
Good evening. My name is Andy Metzel. I'm an attorney at the Taft Law Firm, and it's my distinct pleasure this evening to be before you on behalf of Grand Universe Development Partners. We have several folks in the audience tonight as part of that team. No surprise, that team we've traveled collectively to many, many meetings. We've really made an effort to make sure that we've been on a listening tour, that we've been trying to take comments productively and to try to react and make sure that if there are changes that are necessary, that we're hearing them. Not everything is a change that needs to happen today, because this is in many ways conceptual. But when I say that, I don't take it lightly. When we talk about specifically the Space and Science Center, it's a concept that's really been coming into fruition for over 12 years. And I know many of you know that and have been around in the community for a long time and can appreciate that. But you know, we're really reaching a critical mass and tipping point today as we seek your approval. I do want to just note that some folks from our team may be able to answer questions that are specific if you have them that I'm not able to answer. I want to talk with you briefly, you know, just as a reminder, and I know you're well aware of this, but this is really as a result of this 66-plus acre area needing to evolve. It is currently part of the Links PUD, which did not come to fruition. Really, with no fault of the Grand Universe team, we were one part of that process and hoped to be included had it been developed, but we were not developing the entire site. Now, with a lot of effort, investment, time, we have actually acquired all of that property, and so it is time for the Links to evolve and hopefully become something that is contributing to this community as opposed to something that we're just dreaming about in this community. I also want to extend an apology, because I feel like sometimes in the effort to seem excited about a project, when we talk as an overview for your benefit, instead of getting into the nitty-gritty details, perhaps we underestimate some of the effort that has gone in. So I've heard some comments about before we waive all the development standards for this project, or there are no guidelines for this project, that's actually not the case. And when we submitted the PUD, it was not a matter of a lawyer like me doing a nice Google search on a bunch of different types of development that would be pie in the sky, and I hoped that someday this would be pretty and shiny and look like that. Those were not things that I did. Those were things that the Grand Universe Development team actually hired the expertise of Browning Day. They hired the expertise of American Structure Point to look at the site, which is a very large site, but from an engineering perspective, and say, what are we going to give as examples that are not only in the correct character, they have the same architectural rhythm, they actually are the right pattern for this development and help promote the theme to support the space and science on this property. What are things in landscaping that are actually achievable when this property is developed? So when you look at all of those photos that have been provided as illustrative exhibits, those are not something pretty and shiny I put together. They are intentional and they are achievable, and they were recommended by Browning Day in conjunction with this development team. So I just feel like that I'm making the apology, because sometimes I don't give you all the benefit of the hard work that went into selecting those things that are very, very realistic for this site by these developers. And I just wanted to share that with you. I thank you, Kevin, for summarizing the changes. There were, you know, before we even got to the APC stages and before this council, we had a couple of other meetings, all the way back in July, with the Area Plan Commission folks, talking about this PUD and what needed to be included. We had another meeting in October before we even filed. We did meet with the neighbors at the library and hosted that meeting. We took those comments to heart. So we have taken the time and the opportunity to hear comments. Once the PUD was amended, according to the comments that we had, and we went through that workshop meeting, we feel like we had a really good product, and we had a unanimous decision recommending approval of that. So at this stage, while we still continue to receive some comments, we're not discounting them. I would never want anyone to think that. It's just that we already have this PUD that's been voted upon, and we're not at liberty to just revise it without going backwards, back in front of the PUD, back in front of workshopping, and do this process all over again. So we're not discounting. It's just that we're a little bit hamstrung in what we can do at this stage when it's already been recommended to the council as amended. Some of the other highlighted amendments I just want to mention to you, there were some comments from the Plan Commission about the lack of height restrictions on some of the different development areas, and we did include now height restrictions. At the request of planning, we did those in feet as opposed to stories. And just for instance, the Grand Universe District, which is what you see there in the blue, which has the Johnson Hagerman Space and Science Center on it, that height has now been proposed to be 180 feet in the PUD. It's 180 only because it includes a planetarium and observatory, and there's certain equipment that may actually extend beyond the building facade. So we just want to make sure that we fit in that. So that has been defined at 150 feet. The resort district, we have now revised that to be, I want to make sure I get this right, 150. So all other development within the district would be lower than what is planned for the Space and Science Center, which is really sort of the focal point, which is supposed to be everything, you know, pivots around that. And that is really the attraction. We do feel like also there is a height restriction in all districts, Town Center District and also the Sports and Entertainment as well. In the Sports and Entertainment, it is 100 feet now, and we have revised the PUD to reflect that. And in the Town Center District, it is 80 feet, so significantly lower. And by default, because of the area and also because of the height restriction, it can only be so dense. I have heard some comments that we've received about apartment-type development, and I want to be very clear. There's no place in the PUD that it says apartment development. That is not what is intended here. This is mixed-use development, and what is defined in the PUD is general business and also multifamily, but it is a component of both of those things. So it would include like what you would define in other ordinances as a mixed-use development, probably retail, first floor, possibly mixed in with some multifamily, but it is in no way, shape, or form intended for a large portion of this property to just be apartments. We didn't say it that way for a reason. So I just wanted to clarify that. I really think that with regard to other issues, I mean, the amendments were fairly minimal as far as just minor things. The taking out the references to the road, Tomlinson Road, I think that was significant. It wasn't that we're abandoning that process. It's just that we know that that's a very large discussion, and it involves a lot of coordination with Public Works. It also involves coordination with the way that Chad Hiddle is ultimately going to be designed. So that's a much larger conversation for another day, but it's all as part of this process. So we did remove that language from the PUD just to make sure that it's clear that we actually intend to cooperate and make that a part of this productive conversation. So I don't want to belabor it too much because I think you may have some questions and I'd love to hear them. We really would, this has been a lot of years in the making. We respectfully request your support for this PUD, and I think that would be a huge step in the right direction in making this particular area in your community an addition, something that would complement what you already have with Grand Park. One of the comments that we received during one of our meetings was that 76, I think that's the percent I recall, of the folks who come and visit Grand Park and play sports there that are from out of town go to Indianapolis. And so what you really want is play and stay. So we have people who are exercising their bodies. It would be wonderful if they come over to Grand Universe and exercise their minds and keep their dollars and their visit in this community for a much longer period of time. So happy to entertain your questions if you have them.
Thank you, Ms. Mitzel. Any questions, comments this evening?
Yeah, I've got a couple.
Great.
So I heard you just say in the town center district area that, so every one of those buildings is going to be a mixed use. So the first floor of all those buildings is going to be commercial, and then above is residential?
Not every one of those buildings. The idea is that there is a blend of mixed use. And so some of the buildings will have a component. This is conceptual and design at the moment. The engineering on the site, that's a much bigger ask and much bigger task. But we need to have certain retail type components and places for people to eat and places for people to want to visit. So those will be incorporated into multifamily type uses. And there may be a blend of multifamily, so it may be some, and Jeff, I think I'm right, some townhome and some, you know, and some more traditional smaller units as well.
So what's the ratio gonna be of something like that? Like, that's what I have a little bit of heartburn right now, is it's so open that it leaves it up to the economic developer to decide what's right or wrong. And like, basically, once we approve the zoning tonight, then it's out of our hands. And then I'm just kind of like, well, I approved it, but I don't know what was going on. So I love the Grand Universe, the hotel, the commercial aspects of it, but there's some things in this PUD that I've never seen before, like the unlimited amount of apartments or MF2 housing, not knowing what that limit is going to be. Is it, I mean, do we have an idea of what you guys can fit in 8 stories? Is it 1,000 units? Is it 200 units? Is it 3,000 units? What is it? Like, I have no idea.
Well, sure, and I'll be clear. I think it's 6 stories first. And that's what I was talking about with regard to the geographic restriction. You know, there's only so much area that is designated for this purpose. And with the height restriction, you can only get so much density. We don't have an exact number because really the market is going to drive what is necessary. Look, any financier, any developer is going to look around and see what's happening in Westfield right now. And if you all are maxed out at apartments and there's a lot of vacancy, no one's going to try and put a smaller type unit in this site that is not going to be productive or generate the right kind of revenue to be sustainable. If there is a need for more townhome walk-up style, you know, and that is something that is sustainable that they can support here and blend it in with mixed-use retail, I think that that will be what would be financed and that would be identified. It's not just economic development who would be approving this. Anything that has to be approved as far as development is concerned is also going to come in front of, you know, your planning department as well. I mean, it's not just carte blanche, we can do anything we want.
What townhomes, is that MF1 or MF2 in our UDO? Because there's nothing in MF1 in this district. Is that MF2, high, medium density? Because right now, you guys wouldn't be able to have townhomes in that district the way it reads, I don't believe, but I could be wrong.
It's medium. Sorry, I didn't bring my whole ordinance
So
book
it's
with me.
MF2 commercial, basically, is what you guys are asking for, and you said you want townhomes possibly. Is that an MF1 use? Todd? Okay. So that's a little, I just want to, I don't want to get those wrong right now.
When we selected that with the architects, that the idea was that it gave the flexibility of having a blend of different types of housing units, not freestanding single,
Yeah.
but, you know, multifamily, but multifamily in a lot of different characters and forms. So it would accommodate, like I said, a walk-up style as well as, you know, trying to get more density in that area. We've been told and been encouraged from many folks in the community, more density, more density.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think we want townhomes in this area. That's why I'm kind of concerned you said that. Like, I don't think that this is the right area for townhomes.
I only mentioned it for the purpose of saying that the market will help drive, even if it's only in a small segment. You know, if you're trying to create maybe a buffer along one particular area, that the market will help drive the economics of what actually would be developed. And any of that would come before.
Well, usually the market drives it, and then the developer comes in front of us and tells us what they want to put in front of us. Right now, it's basically just an open vision of, we want to have this zoned for these couple things, and then we don't have to stick with the concept plan. It says in here, it literally says things may vary from the concept plan. So basically, that concept plan can change. It doesn't have to come back to us at all. I mean, it's up to the economic developer to decide yes or no to that. It's just a lot of things make me uncomfortable in that. Like, I love the project. I wish you guys would just come to us with the Grand Universe and the hotel And I've been told by everybody that residential aspect, this district's not happening for another 2 to 5 years or 3 years or whatever it is. And everybody's kind of scared to go back through the next 4-week process of going to APC quickly and getting it revoted on by changing a couple of things. I would feel more comfortable putting a deadline or basically saying like, hey, we have to have the Grand Universe done first or started, and then yes, we can move on to these things, because I just don't want to see Grand Universe not happen, and then we're approving pretty much anything MF2 or commercial or mixed use to go in there when we may not know exactly what we want 2 to 5 years down the road if Grand Universe doesn't happen.
Yeah,
So
that's
it's scary the way this PUD is written. I love Grand Universe. I really want it to happen. This part of it really scares me.
I can understand the hesitation, and I want to say the flexibility is written in there by design. The priority right now, and I think I'm safe in saying this without revealing confidences, but the financing structure that is currently being sought after and under review is prioritizing 2 segments of this development, and that is the Space and Science Center and the Resort District. Not even seeking financing at this time for any kind of the sports and entertainment or the town center. So the focus really is on the blue and on the yellow that you see before you. And those are the critical components here that will drive everything else.
Do you guys plan on developing the residential or just possibly selling that parcel off once it's all like parceled up?
I can't answer that question, but somebody else here might.
But before we do, just a quick answer to the townhome question. Permitted use in MF1, not MF2, and the underlying zoning designation for the town center district here is MF2. So it's not a permitted use by right today, as proposed.
Yeah.
That's me. I misspoke.
That's fine. That's fine.
I
I'm glad
know
it's written that way, because I don't
we
think
sought
townhomes.
flexibility of this, we wanted more density, but if they want to put some 2 bedrooms and 1 bedrooms, we have to be able to have that to be able to adjust to fit the site, so.
Yeah, usually PUDs have a max amount of units, and that's where it's concerning. Like, I just don't know what you guys are building. I don't know if it's 200 units or 2,000 units, which is crazy that we would say yes to something like this tonight and not know what the max units are.
Well, that's why the height requirement dictates that. I mean, you couldn't put 2,000 units.
Well,
It'd be
I
a
know, but
jail.
do you guys have first right of refusal to this land to the east as well?
We do.
So, I mean, I envision that's going to connect to more residential. And so, I mean, at some point, we're going to get to a large number of residential in this area.
Well, first of all, it's not included in the PUD, and so that would come before you, that additional land to the.
I'm just saying it's going to probably be residential, that's all I'm saying.
So it's your understanding that there is no limit, or there is no number that's attached to the?
There's no limit to, only limit is parking in the PUD, so they're
Well,
limited by the number of parking.
Then what's the value of these documents that, this is a letter from the Redevelopment Commission to Arden Johnson, and it shows 771 units in those 5 buildings. So,
That's conceptually what they have spoken about, and I don't want to commit before you that they're going to build exactly 771, but we know that 771 are viable and can be sustainable in that location with the size that is currently before you. So I think that the PUD has to be somewhat flexible. I'm sorry. Sure.
Counselors, if you don't mind, I'd love to step in here for a moment and talk about the importance of this project as an economic development investment within our city, and how the Redevelopment Commission and the Economic Development team is working alongside Grand Universe to help control what is happening here from a redevelopment standpoint and the phasing specifically that you've questioned. First of all, the letter that we have provided is based on the original concept that was approved by the Economic Development Department and my team, which included all phases of this project. We, as an economic development team, are looking at what is the investment into this opportunity, what are the obligations of the developer, what are we receiving in this partnership, what are we giving in this partnership. So by us including what our baseline assumptions are, it gives us the tools that we need in order to understand what the overall investment strategy is of the developer and what we're willing to commit to over time. And for a project of this magnitude, this is over years. This is not over the course of the next 2 or 3 years. This is probably 5, 7, 10 years. This is a massive development. So as we navigate these negotiations that we'll have, we have a priority on ensuring that the planetarium district is built first. And we are working with the developer on that agreement. We do not have numbers yet that we are ready to share publicly on what the total investment dollars are, what the value of the bond is. We will have those numbers available for council when we come back to you for a bond approval, but we don't have that at this time. I do assure you that we will have phasing in this, and we will have clawbacks, protections for the city that will ensure that the developer is delivering what they have promised on their first phases before they are moving on to the future phases. I want to highlight a few things that I think are really important to note, and this is based on the approval letter that was provided, the massive development that is planned for these 4 phases over time. This project would have a total estimated investment of $1.1 billion as reviewed by my team and associated with with that letter of approval. The base assessed value on this land is $145,000, and this comes out to only $2,580 an acre. That is the current assessed value of this project. The future assessed value will be $302.3 million at a value of $5.37 million per acre. This will generate an annual tax increment for the city of $6.2 million of revenue a year, which we will reinvest very, very judiciously within this Grand Universe district to create a great experience for the people who are visiting Westfield and wanting to experience this tourism and education component. Like I said before, we're navigating the phase 1 incentives. We are anticipating a TIF bond. We do not know the net proceeds yet. We will be working with Grand Universe on utility relocation and construction of Chad Hiddle and Tomlinson Road. The land that you see that Chad Hiddle will be connecting along the perimeter of the blue area would be granted by Grand Universe to the city for the construction of that road. We would also be providing a small area of land along the Monon as a utility easement so that utilities can be relocated along Tomlinson to serve the resort district. We don't yet know what the incentives will be for the future phases. Based on past experience in mixed-use districts like are shown in that town center area, that cannot be built without incentives. It also can't be built without a mixed-use component. Very typically, what I've seen is that there has to be a balance between office, multifamily, retail, and other uses in order to be able to have enough TIF generation to support the parking needs for the district. So as that town center area gets further refined down the line, a couple years from now, that letter of approval that was referred to before requires that Grand Universe is coming back to my team, and they are letting us know what they are planning that deviates from that letter of approval. And we will have to renegotiate our incentives and any changes to the plan based on that baseline. So I hope that helps as a starting point. I'm happy to help answer any other questions. Anyway, I hope that helps a bit.
Do you have any?
I mean, yeah, but I feel like I'm getting into, really deep, but I feel like I have to understand a little bit. You said there's gonna be clawbacks. Like what, can you give me examples of if Grand Universe does not get built, how we would stop the residential if we approve the zoning tonight? Like say, for instance, they sell that parcel, that separate district right there, they totally sell it to new owner. How do we, if Grand Universe doesn't get built, how do we stop that or make them change their plans?
Sure. So within the development agreement itself, we will have a master development agreement over the entire project, so all 4 phases, and it would allow the developer to bring in development partners, but only with the permission, the approval of the redevelopment commission. So they would not be able to just go sell this for someone else to develop without bringing it to the redevelopment commission for approval. It would be part of the legal document, and it would be associated with, with the bond approval for phase 1. This would be, this will be a legal document that's signed by both parties.
And keep in mind as well, sorry not to interrupt, but nothing else can happen if the planetarium isn't built. It's in the PUD. That has to happen before anything else can. So you're protected day one, just in, your example, Noah, was, hey, I'm going to sell off and just do the mixed use. That can't happen. You've got to do phase one first. And then.
Where does it say that in the PUD? I'm sorry,
We were just discussing that. I don't know exactly where it's at in the language, but we added that language in.
I am not your PUD person, so yeah, this would be within the development agreement. Yeah, I don't believe that
yeah,
there's
that's
anything
correct.
specifically in the PUD. This would be just the development agreement.
Okay.
But the development agreement, and I share Mr. Herron's concerns, the development agreement is between Grand Universe and the city, correct?
Between Grand Universe and the redevelopment department.
Okay.
Or redevelopment commission, yes.
Sure. But the concern is if Grand Universe is gone, right? They're out of the picture at this point, so that agreement wouldn't have any weight at this point. And so then we have a zoned residential part of this. And that's the only part that I have concerns with am I okay with the residential being a part of this entire project? Yeah, I think it fits in as a big project. But that's the concern, is if Grand Universe doesn't build what they say they're going to build, we have rezoned something that I otherwise would not have zoned that residential.
Let me be sure I understand your question. So are you asking if that parcel was sold off to another owner? Or when you say if Grand Universe isn't connected with us anymore?
Right,
can
so
you
if
be- is that-
they just decide, doesn't make sense, we're not building. And so they want to sell off this land. Part of it now is zone residential, so they don't even have to come back before us to build because it's already been zoned.
But it will all be still tied into this developer agreement, which will give them obligations to develop on a certain timeline. So we'll have protections in place to make sure that they are developing. There will be allocation areas created for each of these districts. They will have delivery timelines, and we will do our best to make sure that we have all the protections in place to make sure that this is developed on the timeline that is agreed upon.
Ms. Metzel, you wanted to add a comment?
I do, please, thank you. Thank you, I'm sorry, I didn't get it right. It is fair to say that you would be including an area that is zoned residential, but it's not fair to look at it independently as if it's zoned just to that residential category in your ordinance. It is zoned as part of a collective PUD, so it would have to be developed as if it was part of the PUD to move the intent of the PUD forward, to be consistent with the entire district to promote space and science. So it's not as if a residential developer comes in, they chop out that piece and develop it just according to M2 standards. It is a part of the PUD. So that PUD, provided that it's approved, is going to be the guiding factor as far as zoning is concerned on a going forward basis. If a developer independently wanted to just come in and do something on its own, it would have to extricate itself from the PUD, go through the whole zoning process, and independently zone that property just as an M classification for whatever their intended purpose.
And I believe what you're saying, and I think we both want the same thing here.
Sure.
It's just, I just don't think we've read that language anywhere. That's what gives us concern. So
Yeah.
that's all I'll say on that.
I think that's just the struggle with, some communities don't use PUDs on the regular. They just make you zone each, area of property and use PUDs more selectively or rarely. Because you have this wonderful opportunity to use the PUD mechanism here, it does give you that kind of flexibility, but it also hamstrings this developer so that they cannot just independently develop these sections. It has to be integrated as part of the PUD. So it really is a mechanism that in a way protects the community. It hamstrings the developer. They can't just do what they want. It would have been nice maybe if Grand Universe could have said, hey, Lynx didn't go through and it failed, so we're just going to do this portion of it on our own. But they couldn't because it's part of the Lynx PUD. So the other properties would have been developed according to Lynx. And so that, in a way, do you see how that would hamstring even the Grand Universe, the way that it was formally approved? So we had to go through this process to come up with the vision, the overall vision for the property that is consistent with the overall development. It cannot independently just be developed.
I guess my other question is, we talk about this concept plan, but also in the PUD it says we can change it and you don't have to come back in front of us. It's up to economic development. Like, at what point does some of these buildings change, or is there less buildings or more buildings? It never comes back to us because it's already approved that they can do that, right? I mean, is there wording, or is there at some point that like, hey, this has changed enough that it's got to come back to us?
So again, each time there's a bond approval on this project, and we're only currently navigating the negotiations for phase one, which is known, which is the planetarium. As other phases are developed, and when I look at the town center, this may be multiple bond approvals. It may not just be one bond approval for that entire district. There may be, they might decide to develop the 2 southern buildings and then develop the 3 northern buildings separately. Every time there's a bond approval, that will come back before the RDC, before City Council for review. You will get to see architecture. We'll have the opportunity to provide feedback. This is not the last time. There will definitely be opportunities for council to review.
Councilor Dart.
And then, Janelle, just for review, what is the city's financial commitment for the blue section?
We currently are working on those negotiations. We do not have a number to share, but it would be a TIF bond. We do not yet know whether it will be a developer-backed or a city-backed TIF bond, but it would be brought to you for bond approval once that has been negotiated.
Does that also include the resort district as part of that, or just the?
We are just talking about the planetarium portion of it currently, and that initial project agreement will include also any language regarding the build-out of Chad Hiddle, their grant of land to us for that, our utility easement for them to build utilities along Tomlinson, et cetera. Mm-hmm.
Thank you. So Janelle, quick question on stories. And the Grand Park Master Plan, you stated 5 stories. Is that correct?
Yes.
Why 5 stories?
Yeah, so 5 stories is kind of a magic height. And again, we're talking stories instead of feet. I know in PUDs, they prefer to use feet because it's easier to control that from a plan review standpoint. But generally speaking, 5 stories gives you the opportunity from the upper floors to feel like you're part of the community, like you have a connection to the things that are happening. You can hear, you can see, and it creates a better sense of place. When you create taller buildings, you end up with basically a vertical version of urban sprawl, where you have people who are living in high rises who do not feel connected to their community anymore. They feel like they've just kind of escaped, and they no longer see people walking, playing. They don't hear things that are happening down on the street. And so this is just a really great way of connecting communities to one another. It's a model that's really formatted around what you see in European cities. There's really kind of that 4 to 5 story standard that you see across most cities, and it's comfortable. People who are walking down the street don't feel like they are being overpowered by building heights, and people can see and hear and everything.
So with the considered Grand Park Master Plan, the planetarium is going to be substantially higher than, I believe, than 5 stories. Are you okay with?
The planetarium?
Yeah.
Yeah, I hope there aren't people living up on the top of the planetarium.
That's the key
so
part. Thanks for saying that.
I think they'll be okay.
Because it's 5 stories for residential. I'm not
Yes.
going to, although I don't know, maybe Macaulay and I can negotiate a tent up on the roof. I don't know. But we'll work that out later. But the other reality, though, too, is on the different phases.
Yes.
So the phases, this is effectively phase 1, and then there's going to be future phases coming forward. I know in conversations with Mr. Hagerman that we're really focused on specifically the planetarium almost exclusively right now, with the resort being, frankly, second. He's had that conversation with a couple other counselors, and frankly, we understand that. The challenge, though, I think that both Councilor Herron and Deppner have eloquently stated, is that we wouldn't approve residential just for residential. So I think Ms. Metzel's answer in terms of it's a master PUD, you do have the other agreements and other commitments that run with that, this approval. So being able just to, what prevents the possibility of doing residential first? I hope you know this answer because I believe you do, versus what we're talking about on the planetarium piece as well as the resort.
I would say the most important thing is that the financial feasibility of building that without the city's partnership is just not there. In the current climate, with high interest rates, high construction costs, construction escalation being I mean, I've never seen a decade where it's been, I don't know what the current number is on a construction escalation, but, you know, it's been in the 5% and higher. Jeff probably has an actual number that he can share.
It's
It's
the
just
first
not-
thing he looks at every morning, but yeah.
It's not feasible, I'm sure, it's not feasible to build this type of development without a public-private partnership. So there is, I have never seen a developer in the time that I've spent in economic development come to me with a project of this type and say, we're gonna build this without you, city. It just doesn't happen. They can't afford to do it.
Any other questions?
I don't really love that answer, I guess, but is this just gonna be one TIF district, or is it gonna be 4 TIF districts?
I believe the way we're gonna set this up is a single economic development area with at least 4 allocation areas. So the allocation areas, I would imagine, are initially set up with the colors that you have there for the different districts. However, I am really relying on the development team to tell me if they want to do any further subdivision of the town center district, if they'd like to break that up into 2 separate allocation areas.
Counselor Huff?
I mean, I kind of agree with Noah. It gives me a little bit of pause, you know. The addition that I'll make is, you know, I think as our city's growing here and trying to pay attention to thoroughfares and roads and infrastructure, Tomlinson right now is used quite a bit. And we're going to pinch that down, and the results of that, or bringing that up into conversation, what I've been told is we're going to transfer them to Chad Hiddle. And if you run Chad Hiddle from 186th Street there on up to 191st Street, it's not bad. There's not that many interruptions. But if you follow Chad Hiddle around to the north, where it tees back into Tomlinson, there's no roundabout there. And I would like to see some commitment there, that instead of a T road, that's a roundabout, kind of as part of this. And maybe John's going to step up there and speak to that. But that's what I would like to add to Noah's concerns.
Yeah, just for the record, John Nail, Director of Public Works. What I would say is that I'm very confident that between the developer, economic development, and public works, we will have a transportation solution between Tomlinson and Chad Hiddle Drive that is both sufficient and effective for our residents, but also works for the site itself. And if that means an additional roundabout instead of a T intersection, we have the flexibility within what we anticipate the project delivery to be to include that if need be.
Counselor Waniger?
I would just say, I think you've heard from the council tonight, and we've seen it in the past over the years in regards to developments where commitments have come forth in PUDs and things not seen through all the way. So, Janelle, I think that's one of the things in that developer agreement, that is ironclad to make sure that, you know, these items are built in an appropriate manner. And I would probably have more of a heartburn if it wasn't Grand Universe and what they're trying to do with their development. If it was another developer that came forward that had a different plan, I probably would have a lot more heartburn and probably would have a different decision on that. So I mean, there's one gentleman sitting in the council tonight. How many times did you approve a PUD that didn't turn out like you had planned it to, or how it was brought forward? So, and I see you shaking your head yes. So I think that's the premise that all the council members up here that have kind of spoke tonight have said, that we want to make sure that this goes forward and that what's built is, or what's planned to be built is built.
If I may jump in just with my 2 thoughts, then to kind of end the cap this, please. First, what my fellow councilors have been talking about has been a concern that I have expressed, shared, been vocal about, you know, whatever synonyms throw out there in the past as well. You don't have to look any further than just a little bit southwest with the Grand Park Village PUD that was approved in the mid-2010s. That just, in my opinion, is not a good PUD, and why we have many of the problems why we've had many of the problems around Graham Park. And Noah, Councilor Herron, you mentioned a cap on residential units. Graham Park Village PUD has that, and that's how we've actually gotten to some issues in that area, because then developers have just been like, oh, well, we're just going to build the residential first, get all the apartments in there, max it out as much as we can. That's how we got the townhomes in there across from the PAC. So again, several things that have happened there that have been upsetting, and where this is different from that PUD is that is just one massive blanket, single-colored, when you look at the map, PUD, where every single use is permitted everywhere. There's really no restrictions with it. Whereas this, it is restricted, not just in the regards of each district being defined, but as I won't reiterate everything, but everything that's been mentioned by Janelle and the developer as well, of just what is in there is that even though we are not on the hook financially for anything, nothing in here can happen without us. And so the bond approval, so on and so forth, that is our checks and balances for this. And then I'll just add, as my second comment, that I was on, and I've said this previously, but just to reiterate this part, I was on Planning Commission back in 2020 when this was first approved, and it was exciting then, it's exciting now, and even further back when I was just coming from college and attending some chamber luncheons, and it was just a plasterboard with an image and no details associated with it. So with that, I wanted to share conveniently a quote that I was just scrolling social media and popped up and made me think of not just Greg, but the entire team as well, that people with great passion can make the impossible happen. And I've heard a lot from the community of just skepticism of if this will happen or not. So to that quote, please prove everyone wrong that this would not happen, and let's just get this done for Westfield. So thank you.
Any other conversation this evening? We need a motion and a second this evening.
Make a motion to approve ordinance 2470, Grand Universe PUD.
Second.
We have a motion made by Councilor McCarty, seconded by Councilor Waniger. Any other discussion? Seeing none, may we call the roll?
Joe Depner,
Yes.
Noah Herron,
Yes.
Chad Huff,
Yes.
Victor McCarty,
Yes.
Patrick Tam,
Yes.
Kurt Wanninger,
Yes.
John Dart.
Yes.
Motion carries 7-0.
Moving on to new business this evening, we have ordinance 2508, which is the Grand Park District DORA. I believe Danielle Carey-Tolan is making this presentation as well this evening.
I will make this quick for you all. These are just introductions. Before you is the Grand Park District DORA. This is very similar to the downtown Westfield DORA that you guys passed last year. This includes a sport campus and a little bit beyond of the future development that we plan in the Grand Park District. The rules really kind of apply the same as the previous ordinance that you guys passed, with operating times staying the same. Currently, the only operator will be Graham Park itself, and as other establishments come on board, we'll add those on as resolutions, just like the previous one, and they'll come in sections, not sporadic. We'll have design cups, just very similar to the downtown Westfield one. It just will say Graham Park. Thank you, Kevin. I'm kind of making this really quick so that way we can speed this along. And the same thing with the signs. This will allow, as we've talked about, to carry no more than 2 alcoholic beverages out of participating restaurants and through the territory. Here to answer any questions, as this is just an introduction tonight.
This is just an introduction this evening, but any questions, discussion this evening? Councilor Dart?
Yeah, Daniel, I read through the ordinance, but didn't go back to the ordinance that we passed for the downtown area. Are there any differences in the two?
The only thing is the map.
Yeah, just the geographics,
Yep.
right? And so what constitutes, what's the determination? I mean, right now, there's really nothing in this area other than
Graham Park.
the event center,
Mhm.
right? So, some of the questions that have come up is, well, what's going to happen with the the area north of 191st Street. That's all going to be developed at some point, right? When do you add that? And when are you going to add Grand Universe, a section over in Grand Universe? I look at this area and go, there's really nothing there other than the event center. There's really not a huge need for a DORA district at this point. So what's that tipping point?
Right, so we talked about that internally of when to add those things
Yeah.
on, and we will maybe be adding it on, but also we need to make sure it's walkable, within the district. So this is kind of that district with that Grand Park development plan that we're looking at, and we know this will be a walkable area currently, so if we need to, we'll come back before you guys and make amendments.
So on the walkable question, Danielle, I thought there was some conversation about including properties north of 191st Street, also on the, would that be west of Spring Mill Road as well, some event places. So, I mean, we're crossing thoroughfares with the Grand Park Boulevard and other places, so I'm trying to understand why we don't cross there as well. Yeah, this is
Right.
this is a DORA.
Yes, this is the DORA. Yeah, this
Yeah.
is just the DORA.
No, I'm not talking about Riverfront. I'm talking this about DORA, about
Yeah.
having somebody, like, frankly, be at West Fork and
Well,
crossing.
Currently, you can't walk safely across 191st Street.
I can.
If you want to play Frogger,
I don't
then
drink though,
yes.
so.
You can do that. Again, once those establishments and once we figure out a better crossing of the north and south, I think we just wanted to take this currently and make sure that this gets established.
So just for the public, better crossing would be crosswalks and so forth, signalization and those types of pieces. Okay. But it also, this map isn't the final forever map, if you will.
No, it's not.
So how are amendments done to a DORA district then, as far as going back and getting approvals from the alcohol and tobacco board and things like that in regards to?
To update the map?
Yeah.
This isn't working. So I know at this time you can have up to 7, so I think we would have to look into and probably talk to the ATC about if an amendment, how that would work, because technically you could just keep amending one and then you would just have one gigantic one, so I'm sure that's not the intent. So if that were to be the case, I would probably work with them on what that 7 number means and how that works with amendments before we moved forward.
So
You can also dissolve them, so
I'm not
you'd
sure.
probably dissolve one and then
So what did
create
you?
another one.
What did you just say? So let's say we come back and amend it and include an area north of 191st. Does that count as DORA District Number 3?
That has not, I would have to ask them about that
No,
before we did that.
it would not. You would just amend it, so you would just change your map. So it would not count against your 7, if you will. 7 or 7 non-contiguous districts. If you would create a new district, technically you would not be able to cross the street because it wouldn't be the same DORA. So you'd have to make the DORA consistent. Does that make sense? So, I mean, if you would, let's say West Fork Whiskey, just because I've said their name, if you would amend them to be included in this DORA, the Grand Park, called the Grand Park District DORA, you couldn't necessarily, because one DORA can't flow into another. It just it doesn't work.
Is that mixing drinks or what?
No, it's just basically, you can make very large designated outdoor refreshment areas, but you can't all of a sudden cobble together 3 of them and put like an alley to connect six of them.
So when the Grand Junction DORA gets up against the Grand Park DORA, there's just a spike strip between there?
I would
and you
hope,
can't cross it?
I would hope it doesn't, but I like Kurt, your gerrymandering mind, but yeah.
You're welcome.
You're welcome.
I would just add to that, to iterate that if West Fork or anything north of 191st would be included in this future DORA zone, again, it would have to come back to us for approval, but yeah, without any safe crossings, that's not necessarily something that we would consider, and I would just say from personal experience, with me working ELOT during Colts Camp every year, many of visitors ask me, hey, what's that? Can we go across there? On their own discretion, you know, they walk across to West Fork Whiskey. But this would actually help enforcement in the future as well with Colts Camp, Rocks of Forth, so on and so forth. Could you just dive into that a little bit further for the public of how that would help with our events?
Well, with having the store, right, with the Grand Park Event Center, they're the ones that will kind of control the distribution of the alcohol beverages within this district. So they would be the ones that could do that. But again, with the other events, you can have the, you know, food trucks and such. But again, it's limited that space to walk around with those beverages. Does that help? Is that what you're looking for?
Question for you. I assume, I mean, I probably shouldn't assume, but GPSE, the entity leasing this ground now, probably wants this. But is there, I mean, what kind of impact can we do this over their lease without their permission?
They want this.
I assumed, but just making sure.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of baseball games, speaking as a baseball dad, but we'll talk about that later. Any other, Counselor Dart? Yeah. Thank you very much, Ms. Tolan, appreciate that. And then our next matter for new business introduction this evening is ordinance 25-10, which is Common Council of the City of Westfield, Indiana, creating a new fund, Fund 251 for communications. Danielle?
Again, before you, Danielle Carey Tolan. Kayla could not come tonight. She was able to go to another Hamilton County sports event that she asked to go to.
She is listening.
She is listening right now.
She texts me.
I know. So she does send the so this is to establish a non-reverting fund in front of you, and this will help secure sponsorship dollars specifically for some of the communication events that they hold, which is the Memorial Day, the Veterans Day ceremonies, all the weekend, the Disability Council, and any other future events that they do with the Mayor's Youth Council. So this just really helps the communications department control their funds within what they raise.
Thank you. Any questions or comments this evening?
Just kind of a point that, similar to how we already have non-reverting funds for the Parks Department, Westfield Welcome, outside of what you just mentioned, what excites me about this opportunity is being able to have sponsorships for our fantastic community magazine, if you will, that goes out into the public now, because I think that will really help offset some future costs as well.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Don't see any this evening. Thank you very much.
Good.
Next order of business, we heard that. So the next time she's in front of us, just remember. Approval of claims is our next order of business. I assume everyone's had a chance to take a look and review the claims for this council meeting. We need a motion and a second, and we can also have discussion if there is any.
Motion to approve the claims.
Second.
We have a motion made by Councilor Councilor Dart, seconded by Councilor Waniger. Any discussion?
Do have a question regarding approving these claims this evening. If payroll's not correct, legal advice, how can we approve these?
I would have to look into that and get back to you. I'm sorry.
Knowing payroll is wrong and inaccurate, and has been for 3 pay periods. I'm assuming it'll all be reversed out and corrected at some point, so those claims would come back in front of us.
It will. Not represented on the claims docket, should you pass them tonight. We have worked with ADP and with Baker Tilly to get the checks correct for what has been issued. Oh, sorry. We do have to go in and individually, manually cover the hours and the payments that we've made, but because there was a lot of concern about what had happened, because I take it very, very seriously. But there were a series of very bad events for which I couldn't have anticipated. that ADP would break our own payroll system, which is what happened for the second pay. The first pay, as you know, my impression was we were to hit the pause button. The MOU on the tax exemption was signed by fire on January 17th, backdated till January 1st. I have been trying to keep up with all the demands. The review of the payroll is what I had done. And in the last year, in 2024, we did put forward what we thought were 26 good payrolls. We had not heard from anybody any severe problems. The first payroll did not do what the effort was supposed to be with the FICA exemption. ADP essentially broke the second payroll, and when we thought we were on the right track to get back to the third, it was the payroll manager who did not take what I had asked her to prioritize seriously. And as a result, it caused more headaches, more sleepless nights, more prayers than you could imagine to try and get this fourth payroll right. We have the details of all the payments. We know what the hours are. I'm going to work all night if I have to work all night. That's what I've been doing every day to try and get everybody happy. It was an epic catastrophe. And I want to work with Baker Tilly and ADP to get this thing going tomorrow. This should never happen to anyone, but let alone union workers that I care about, this community that I care about, and the people in it. But public safety, number one, you keep me safe, and I want to keep you safe. And with payroll, that didn't happen this month.
Marla, let's just be very clear, though, of the claims that are on this docket for this period are payments to individuals within the police department and/or the fire department on, for lack of a better term, mix-ups that were done through the ADP system to make them square.
Correct.
Okay. And the question that I have, they are square through the first pay period, second pay period, or third pay period? That's my biggest question. But it could be likely that we would see more claims like this to make sure that they are taken care of.
If there are any accounting disparages left after Baker Tilly and I and Kelly and Brady, after we go through everything, disparities, I apologize. If there are, there may be some more minor checks. However, they don't have to be manual checks. It can all be done through ADP. This was a crisis situation.
These were done manually because of our system being down.
Yes, we had no way to produce them otherwise.
Okay.
So on the payroll, so we're talking about the individuals that were cut, individual checks. So this was done outside the ADP system. So how about withholding taxes? Are all those pieces done? Because they didn't run through the ADP system. So how are we taking into account federal taxes, state taxes, kind of all the fun, Social Security?
We produced our internal claims in our office. We also have the evidence of all the printed paperwork. The manual checks that went through ADP, which there were lists, all that evidence is there with all the withholding tax and everything else. There were 3 checks that were sent out that were not done. That is what I'm through ADP. That is what I'm working on tonight to make sure that those hours get entered, and then those will go to each individual's total 2025 pay. But again, we have to enter every single one of them manually.
But there's a way to cut manual checks through ADP, but we don't have to talk about that. Our system was not down, though. You process payroll for a good portion of the city.
The computer system was not down. What was down were all the deductions, all the position ID codes, all the back-end codes that make the whole thing work together. But it was only for those people who had been affected because of the FICA exemption. So, no, it didn't affect civilians.
So who enters those codes?
They were set up 20 years ago when the system was set up.
No, that's not the question. So there was a change. There was a fundamental change that was started.
Oh, yeah.
Who enters those codes?
ADP was entering those codes.
Did
because
you enter codes today?
I did enter some codes
So
today, but they're
why
not
are
the
we,
same
why are we
codes.
transferring, this is crazy. Chief Gaylor, could you come up here? I mean, we have a serious problem. We have firefighters and police officers that are not getting paid. Okay, we have families at home. We've sworn in 15 firefighters today, and frankly, we cleared the room because I didn't want their families to question their choice.
Yeah, so just a couple things for clarification. I think there's a multitude of things here and different subsets, and it's kind of all getting convoluted and run together. In August of 2024, public safety individuals in the 77 fund actually took and held a vote to forego paying into Social Security tax. Because we have a securely funded pension system, commonly called the 77 fund, that is our retirement for those members that are in that particular piece of perf. Vote was cast and held. It was actually official in September. To Marla's point, the recognition or the memorialization of that was signed on January the 17th to be from January 1, 2025 through fruition. The act was completed back in August, so we've had 4 months up until January to get it corrected and right where we needed to go. First pay in January, we come out and things were a mess. ADP didn't help when it come to the second pay. There were some errors in ADP. Those folks, in conversations with Marla and her team, were trying to help and fix and made it worse. Third pay was, hey, we think things are kind of there, and it was worse than the second pay. And so Marla did make some checks to individuals that were short funds. 4 people in the fire department didn't receive a check at all until she actually handwrote the checks. But the whole point and piece of this, it's really a compounding of errors that is just ridiculous. When we opt out of Social Security, we get a check to refund the Social Security tax, and we have deductions taken out of it. Or there are members in the organization that received an overtime check but had all of their deductions, their union dues, their HSA account, and Social Security taken out of it after we've opted out of it into pay 3 of the year. Yes, the system is broke, and we can point fingers wherever we want. Fact of the matter is, I think that the public safety folks just weren't paid. Let's work on getting it right and pay the people. Baker Tilly have been excellent to work with. I've had multiple meetings. As a matter of fact, 8:30 this evening, I was working on my phone with Baker Tilly on payroll. It's not my job as a department head to be working on and doing payroll things, for lack of a better term. So yes, there's frustration, but just for clarification, it was memorialized in January. It was actually voted on and done back in September of 24. So happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for the chief this evening?
Let me just add something as well. You know, this problem has been percolating for a long, long time. You know, if you go back, one mayor and one council that I was a part of as council member, we were entangled in lawsuits between the clerk treasurer's office and the mayor's office. A lot of it was centered around ADP. Looking at the problem not only as we were going through this, but as we try to put the pieces together of how we got to this point, the technology outkicked our coverage a long time ago. We weren't keeping up with updates. We didn't have the right people with the right training and the right skills to run ADP. we as a city would ask for reports, and we're getting PDF copies, which means they're not generating reports through ADP. They're printing them off, scanning them in, and emailing them to us. That should tell you all you need to know about our competency in ADP. So when the public safety passed this change in how payroll was done, we didn't have the competency within ADP, within the clerk's office, not necessarily Marla. Marla inherited this as well. But they didn't have the competency to make that change in a way without doing what it's done, which has put us into a downward spiral of complete chaos. And we don't have the expertise to fix that. So that's why we've asked Baker Tilly to come on board. Now, moving forward, I hope at the sacrifice of our public safety people, which is not good. It's not good for the city. It's certainly not good for the men and women who keep us safe every day. We have to use this opportunity to make changes in how we do business. I can't see ADP. Nobody on my staff can see ADP. I couldn't tell you whether the changes were made 4 months ago because I have no access to ADP. I don't have access to financials. I, as the mayor, the executive of the city, cannot see a single financial report unless I call the clerk's office and ask for them to print it out. That's garbage, and that's got to change. And this is a prime example of what happens when government agencies aren't working together and being collaborative and being open with the information. When I had my own company, when I worked in the Marine Corps, I could view every single one of my department members' ADP. If they took vacation, I can track it, I can see it, I can tell what deductions they request, I can tell what benefits they're taking on. My department heads can't do that right now. How do you manage people when you can't see how many even days vacation they're taking? We have to call the clerk's office and ask them to print out vacation. My God, folks, this is 2025. And we have technology that is so robust, and we're tapping about 5% of it. And that's why we're here. That's why this is a mess. And that's why we got to fix it. And I don't blame Marla. She inherited a big chunk of this. It's been building for years. But we have to take this opportunity and fix it because it's not going to get better if we don't. And oh, by the way, the city's match on my 401k or in every employee in the city of Westfield gets made twice a year. The city is sitting on our match, and we're losing opportunities. I know, Tony, I'm thinking the same thing. Losing opportunities to capture what's happening in the market because we don't have the ability, folks, to go into ADP and make this change because nobody knows what the hell's going on with it. And I'm afraid to ask Marla to do it now, especially after where we're at, because now everybody's payroll is going to be messed up. Right now, it's just public safety. So Baker Tilly has got to come in. We have got, and I need everybody's help in this room up on this stage, nobody touches ADP but Baker Tilly. Nobody. They're the experts, and they're the only one that knows what's going on right now. And we still have people in there fiddle farting around in ADP. Get out of it. Let ADP fix this problem, and then come back and train us and give us the tools we need to move forward today. I shiver to think what's going to happen when we move to a Class 2 city because it's so messed up right now from years of not taking advantage of technology and let it pass us by. It's a good thing this happened. I am so sorry it's happening to our public safety people in this room. I apologize. But it's a blessing in disguise because this is just going to get worse until this gets fixed. And it's got to happen. And everybody in this up here on the stage, including myself, we have to commit that we're going to trust each other and allow this to get fixed in a way that we can move forward as a city.
Thank you, Mayor. Any other comments from council this evening about the claims docket? Anything? We have a motion made by Councilor Dart, a second by Councilor Waniger. Can we call the roll?
Noah Herron,
Yes?
Chad Huff,
Yes.
Victor McCarty,
Yes.
Patrick Tam,
Yes.
Kurt Wanninger,
Reluctantly, yes.
John Dart,
Yes.
Joe Deppner.
Yes.
Motion carries 7-0.
Victor, do you have a city council comments, APC update?
Yeah, just two quick things that we only had on our agenda were Grand Universe, which was approved tonight, and then Lantern Commons, the hotel, we held the public hearing for that. So that's all.
Thank you. Mayor, do you have any further comments this evening?
I'm going to keep real short because this is a long meeting, but I just want to say thank you to everybody up on the stage and the people in the room. They're seeing a lot of questions being asked and a lot of hard questions being asked, and this is a good thing. We're going down a path the city of Westfield's never gone. We're being bold and we're doing things differently to get world-class development. And there's going to be bumps along the way, and we're learning as we go, and the council's learning as we go. So just give each other grace as we try to figure this path out. No question's a bad question. We appreciate you challenging us, and we'll continue to collaborate together to get these things to the finish line.
Thank you. May I have a motion for adjournment?
So moved.
We are adjourned. Thank you.
This needs to go along with it, but